do that too.
Hey, welcome to the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. I have been looking forward to this one for quite a long time. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I don't want to build it up too much, but help me welcome our guest today, Kevin Hadsell. Kevin, how are you today?
I'm doing great, brother. Doing great, man.
We got to ask right off the bat, do I call you Kevin Hadsell? Do I call you Michael Barbaro? What do I call you? Who are you today?
Yeah. So my acting, my professional name in the world of acting and anything entertainment related is Kevin Barbaro. So I took that. Most actors have a stage name so that they can separate their personal life from their professional life.
Oh.
And so I chose that because so my middle name is Michael. I'm Kevin Barbaro, but it's Kevin Michael Barbaro.
Right.
And my grandfather, who's like my hero, is Michael Barbaro. So that was kind of like the genesis of that. But in real everyday life, I own, I'm part owner in a construction company, and I'm just Kevin Hadsell. When I go to people's house, I'm Kevin Hadsell.
Okay.
I'm still, my driver's license still Kevin Hadsell. Obviously.
Yeah. All right. Got it.
Yeah.
I wondered.
But I go by Kevin Barbaro just in the world of entertainment.
Yeah, I didn't know if you made up Barbaro. It's an odd name, but it's an odd like it's catchy. Like, oh, Barbaro, like
Yeah.
it rolls. So
Well, one thing in like the world of acting is that your name should be somewhat reflective of your ethnicity, or so I'm Italian, and I'm cast primarily as an Italian American guy, and so Barbaro, which was my mom's maiden name and my grandfather's name, that is more of an Italian name than Hadsell, and so that's kind of like the reasoning behind it for the most part, and then the other thing too is, Hadsell is, growing up, it was a weird name to have in the fact that people would constantly mispronounce it. So it would be Haskell or Hansdell or Hansel. I mean, I can't, sorry, I got to plug my computer in.
Oh, good.
Little technical difficulty here. So I went through, my childhood, and people were constantly mispronouncing it. So, it was like, well, it's a good opportunity to, brand myself. And so Kevin Barbaro, to whittle it all down, Kevin Barbaro is a business. Okay.
That's a
Kevin
good way to think
Hadsell
about
is
it.
a person.
Yeah.
That's
did you go by Kevin your whole time growing up, or did you ever go by Mike or Michael?
No, I was always Kevin. Yeah.
Always Kevin.
Except for my grandmother. So my grandmother, interestingly enough, my entire life, my grandmother called me Michael. And it was just because she was old, you know what I mean? And it wasn't like she didn't know my name was Kevin, obviously, but my grandfather, is Michael, of course. And then their oldest is my uncle, Michael, all right, Michael Barbaro Jr. And so my grandma was constantly yelling at my grandfather all the time, and she'd be like, Michael, and for some reason, my grandmother just always would refer to me as Michael. So when she would yell out Michael, she was either yelling at me or yelling at my grandfather, one or the other. So
I think she knew what an honoring name it was. So yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So, I've always gone by Kevin. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we start talking about childhood, and that's perfect. Let's start with, let's go get in our Wayback Machine here. How did you get into this great sport of track and field athletically? Is this something you started in high school, earlier? Did you get late? Where did we start going for track and field?
So I was actually a baseball player, and interestingly enough, I always have been, and I actually continue to still be a better baseball player than I was a track athlete. But my parents moved around a lot. And so I actually, for the most part, got into track and field a little bit later. So I got in as a junior in high school. We had moved to Vermont. And like I said, I was always playing baseball at a high level, travel baseball and whatnot. And I was a catcher. And so we moved to South Carolina, and we moved to Vermont from New York. And at the high school that I moved to, they already had like this incredibly good catcher, and I was like, you know what, I was convinced that I'd be better at football, because I actually wanted to play football in college. And so I was like, maybe I'd be better if I just focus on football and I do track so I can concentrate on football. So but I still played in the summertime. I still played travel baseball, even as a junior and senior in high school. And I was actually recruited to play baseball at a few schools because I played Legion ball. And so, particularly in New England, you get exposed to a lot of baseball coaches. You know what I mean? So
you're
I was
playing
actually recruited
football,
baseball, and track.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had kind of decided, I was more of honestly, more of a jack of all trades than I was, great at anything. I mean, I was a, state champion and these kinds of things, but I wasn't really that great. And then I decided at the last minute, what's that?
What were you state champion in?
300-meter hurdles. And
Is that right?
yeah, I was, and I also threw the jav. So Vermont was like this weird state where one of the 6 states that threw the javelin. And so I went to college, and I decided at the last minute that I wanted to go to the University of Vermont. And I was growing up in Vermont. I mean, my last 2 years, were in Vermont. And my best friend was going to go and play and do track at UVM, and I was being recruited, and so I decided to go to UVM, and so that's actually where I really developed like this love for track and field, more so than in high school, although I had great coaches in high school. But so I was more of a multi guy in college, and but I had a lot of injuries, and I tore my rotator cuff. Just a lot of things that happened. You know what I mean? But that was really where I first decided that I wanted to be a coach, because I had a great coach.
So back up to high school, you're 300 hurdles, javelin,
right?
So it made kind of sense to maybe go the multis.
Yeah, I figured I'd be. That's going to be my best bet. I mean, I was a good javelin thrower only because of the arm strength, from years and years of baseball and being a catcher particularly.
Right.
You understand, you spend your whole life growing up knowing how to throw as hard as you can. That's kind of lost on a lot of people, like the being able to whip your arm as fast as possible without muscling it,
that's interesting because we could have the conversation all day about a pitcher of baseball going to throw the javelin. I never thought about the catcher until you mentioned it. I think, they've got to throw to second really hard to get. Obviously, you're throwing as much as the pitcher is.
Yeah, awesome. It's a different. The only difference. So before we get off on this tangent on the jab, but I mean, really, the difference is the arm slot. So a pitcher can be more of an overhand, high release, depending upon how much junk you're throwing, you know what I mean? Whereas a catcher, it's more of a quick release. So, as a catcher, I'm releasing from here, right? Whereas a javelin or a pitcher may have a higher arm slot, you know what I mean? Right. And I think a pitcher, somebody that is an overhead, high release, high arm slot pitcher would be an amazing javelin thrower, because not only are they used to throwing all out and generating that whip, but their hips, they understand the transfer of momentum, and a catcher does too, because you're trying to do it incredibly fast, Right. So that was where but then that transferred over to track, and then and like I said, then that was really where I decided I wanted to be a coach. So
and don't worry about tangents. I feel like there's a
lot of tangents, bro.
This is the podcast of 100 tangents right here, I believe.
Yeah.
So when you go to Vermont, you chose Vermont, the Catamounts?
Yeah, Catamounts, brother.
One of my stupid little trivia is I like to know every mascot of every school.
Yeah. And there's some random ones out there.
Yeah.
Most people don't understand what the UVM is more than they don't understand what the Catamounts are.
It's Vermont Montpelier, right?
No, actually, that's not what it is. So,
what is it?
So UVM, yeah. So UVM is actually the initials for the proper name for the university in Latin. And so it's the University of the Green Mountains. So it's like Unitas Veritas Montes UVM.
Really?
It's the Latin abbreviation for University of the Green Mountains.
I am going to get a Jeopardy question correct now because of that right there. I
Yeah,
did
I'm
not
telling you,
know
you
that.
will, bro. Yeah.
Is UVM in Montpelier?
No. So
Oh,
UVM is
yeah.
actually in Burlington. There's very
Okay.
little in
Oh, that's
Montpelier.
right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. It is Burlington.
Montpelier was chosen to be the capital of Vermont simply because it's located dead center in Vermont. So back in the day, it was done so that everyone had the opportunity to go to the capital to
Right.
vote
Right.
and to join in legislature. And so they chose Montpelier, small
That's,
town, dead center.
that's
But
cool.
Burlington is the largest town.
It is in Burlington. And I think Montpelier just from, I think I just knew it because it's the
Yeah,
capital.
well,
So
the
that's what I thought.
capital. I
Yeah,
mean, you
yeah,
would kind of
yeah,
expect, and then the
yeah.
M kind
Yeah.
of throws people
Right.
off too. Yeah.
So when you chose UVM, what were you thinking? What major and career wise? What were you thinking at that point as an
That was also an
18-year-old?
interesting story because coming out of high school, I was actually kind of a math geek. All right. And so on the old SAT, I scored a 700 on the math portion of it. Okay. And so I was really so I actually went to college to become a physics major. So that was
Oh.
actually what I really wanted to do. I wanted to do physics. I loved physics. I loved
What did you want to
mechanical
do with it?
reasoning. What's that?
What did you want to do with it?
I
What
had
did
no
you want
idea.
to? Okay, you
I
just
just
wanted to
loved
study.
it. I just
Yeah.
loved the learning process behind it, And it was funny because I got to my first physics class at UVM and I sat down, and as smart as I thought that I was, uh, I sat there, I'm like, man,
Oops.
but it was like, how does everyone else already know this?
Right.
Like, am I the only cat that's lost right now? And so then I was like, you know what? Physical education sounds like a really cool major too. And so I ended up becoming a PE major, and not because I wanted to coach. I just I thought that was probably the better route. And then of course most of the athletes at UVM were PE majors, and I really enjoyed it. So that was what I ended up deciding on, landing on.
Any influence from parents or family as far as were they PE
No,
majors or physics majors or teachers or
no,
anything?
not at all. My uncle Michael, he actually went to West Point and he worked
Wow.
for NASA as a ceramic engineer. And yeah, really smart cat. I mean, real like crazy smart.
Hmm.
And then his brother, my mom's brother, we called him Duffy, but his real name was Ralph. But my uncle Duffy was actually an optical engineer. So he actually worked for Kodak back in the day, and had like 9 or 10 different patents on lenses.
Wow.
And so my family, I guess, if you think about it in those kind of terms, I mean, we kind of geared towards engineering
Right.
and that kind of thinking, critical thinking, you know what I mean? And being able to analyze things and imagine things, and
Well,
good with numbers. So
we talk a lot about culture of programs or culture of businesses. I'm a believer that there's a culture in families as well, that you're
yeah,
influenced by aunts, uncles, grandma, grandpas,
yeah,
uh, cousins of what they do. It's like,
yeah,
when you think about when
good
you're
and bad.
exactly. Oh yeah, absolutely. I've
Right.
got I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and their uncle, my wife's brother, is an engineer that works on. Uh, I hope he never listens to this because I can never get it right. I always want to call them windmills, but there's some real name, wind energy, that
Yeah.
those kind of things. And so, my son, who would not be introduced through engineering through me,
Right.
he goes to they have a bring your kid to work day up at his work up in Chicago. So he brings his nephew, and so he's exposed to things. So now he's interested in engineering type stuff, the Legos and building to specificity and things like that, which he
Yeah.
never would have gotten from me. So I'm
Yeah.
always curious just how the influence of a family affects what someone goes to college for, what they choose,
Yeah.
etc. So you switch to a PE major.
Yeah.
You're on the track. You're a multi. Did you say you were getting maybe?
Yeah. I still did the intermediate hurdles, through some jav. We had a really good, our head coach was a throws coach actually. And because kids grew up in Vermont doing the javelin, we always had guys throwing 200 feet, and So that, but I struggled with some injuries. Like I said, I tore my rotator cuff. I actually had to teach myself the pole vault. So we didn't have a pole vault coach. Our pole vault, well, I mean, our head coach coached the pole vault, but I decided that in the summer between my freshman year and my sophomore year that I wanted to learn the pole vault. So Gutterson Fieldhouse was a mile from my apartment, and a mile from my parents' home at that, because I spent my summer of freshman and sophomore at my parents' home. They lived a mile up the hill, really. And so Gutterson Fieldhouse had our indoor track. Well, our indoor track back then, I mean, we're talking, 1989, was actually literally cement. So it was a 10 lap to the mile, 3-lane cement track that had 3 lanes painted on it. It had a dirt infield.
Wow.
I mean, you want to talk about, I probably have like an iron lung, bro, from all this. This is probably why I won't ever get coronavirus, man, because I spent 4 years. So cement itself, concrete, not cement, but concrete has dust in it automatically. There's always dust on concrete. You know what I mean? Or on concrete slab. Yeah. So we always had that dust. And then the infield literally was dirt because it was dirt. They just used it for everything. So Gutterson Fieldhouse looks like it looks like like a hanger. Okay. So it's rounded and it's long. And on one half of it is Gutterson Fieldhouse, the hockey arena. Okay. And of course, hockey is huge in Vermont, and the other half of it was the indoor track. But everybody used that. So baseball would practice on that dirt infield, softball, soccer. I mean, winters get tough in Vermont, bro.
Oh yeah.
So, everybody just kind of used it. And so we literally ran on concrete, and it just, I mean, obviously that's why you end up getting hurt. I mean, it was literally concrete.
Where was the pole vault? You said you were going there to do
pole vault was in the corner. So what happened was, it was an odd place. So if you became a good pole vaulter, there was only so high you could vault because the ceiling was rounded and it was shoved in the corner. So once you get to a certain height, you're literally heading for the truss, Right. And so anyway, we didn't have a pole vault coach, and I was like, I really want to learn it. You know what I mean? So on my own, and this is before YouTube or anything else, you know what I mean? I would run there, and it was always unlocked for some reason. There's no way it's unlocked in today's society, but back then it was just always unlocked. And I would go in, and we had some practice poles that were kind of like these unbreakable type. I mean, they weren't like standard poles. This is back in the day, man. And I figured out the whole process of like, well, interestingly enough, it bends better if you hold it this way, And I remember just figuring it out, like literally, I knew I watched people do it, and I'd see they would measure their steps just like I would measure to do the triple jump or long jump or anything else, and figured out that I needed to, jump into it, and I needed to, so. The very first time that I ever learned how to bend the pole, that very first feeling of getting it, I was ecstatic because I was like, man, this is like the coolest feeling, And so I taught myself how to pole vault, but that ended up turning into one of my injuries because I was doing some pop-ups. This was my junior year. I was doing some pop-ups and I went up over the bungee, and when I came down, I landed on my right side and my head snapped down like this really hard. And I like this jolt of lightning shot through my right arm. And I heard my neck, crack, you know what I mean? And so anyway, what ended up happening is I ended up pinching a nerve in my neck, and I lost about 70% of the strength in my right arm from it. And I had to rehab. It took months and months to get back. I mean, it was like I could curl even a 100-pound dumbbell in my left hand, you know what I mean? And I could barely lift a 30-pound dumbbell in my right hand. It literally pinched that nerve, and it essentially screwed up my arm, and it took a long time to get that back. So
I think, from my experience of talking to pole vaulters around the world, I think that is what makes you officially a pole vaulter. Not that you actually learned it and did pop-ups and bent it, that you got injured pole vaulting. That seems to be a very common.
Yeah, that's kind of and you earned your stripes,
Exactly.
Either that or breaking a pole, one or the other.
Yeah, of course.
Or both. Yeah.
Where was, so you're studying PE, learning pole vault, where was coaching in your mind at this point, or any kind of career at this point?
So I'll tell you exactly, I know exactly the moment when I decided that I wanted to be a coach. I know the exact moment. My senior year, my fourth year, because I ended up doing a fifth year, but so my fourth year, 2 weeks before Christmas, my apartment burned down. So there was an arson a few doors down from my apartment. Okay. I mean, it was crazy. So I came home, I was working. It was a Friday night. Okay. And so Friday night going into Saturday. So it was late Friday night, early Saturday morning. So I had worked I had like this part-time job working at Howard Johnson's in town. So I got home and I fell asleep on the couch, and we lived in the upper part of a duplex. Okay. And so my roommate wakes me up. It's like, dude, I think there's a fire, man. It's like 2:00 in the morning. I was like, what?
You were there.
And I was like, shit. So I go to the back window. There's like a cemetery off the back of the apartment, So I open up the window and I could see like this glow. So I run into the bathroom and I open up the shade, and dude, there was a building right next to us that was like kind of almost as long as our building. So I could see the back of the next building.
Right.
And the building after that was this really long garage, because it was a guy that had like a auto repair shop or something like this. So it was like an extra long garage, and the whole thing was on fire. The whole car thing was on fire, the garage, and the house was on fire next to us.
Whoa.
And you could feel the heat.
How far away at this point?
It's the next, there's no yard. I mean, it's the next building. All we had was like a little sidewalk between the two buildings.
Right.
And all of a sudden, bam, the front door just gets kicked in, and it's the fire department. And they're like, get out, get out. And we were like, Jesus, so I'm running, and, you're trying to figure out what you're going to pick up or what, and so we had this dog that we had found. His name was Shitty, actually. No hyperbole there. His name was Shitty. And because I had actually found, he walked into our apartment maybe like August of that summer. I was asleep on the couch. I always sleep on the couch. So I was asleep on the couch, and I woke up. I woke up, and we live in the upstairs of woke up, and there was this dog sitting in he's just laying there, and he had taken a dump. And he was laying by the dump, and I was like, man, that's kind of shitty, and then literally that became that dog's name, So anyway,
you grabbed him.
Yeah, we grabbed the dog and a blanket, and my one roommate and his girlfriend were in there, and then my other roommate was there. We run outside, and when we came down the stairs, we were like, hey, did you guys get the old man? Because there's an old guy that lived underneath of us. So they kick in his door, and they pull him out of there. And so as soon as I walk out, I look to the left, right? We were the end house on the street. I looked to the left, and it was craziest sight I've ever seen. There were like 7 houses on fire, all on fire. And the heat was tremendous. Like the cars in the road were self-combusting. Like they would just turn themselves on, and they were just melting. And there was a bus station across the street, like a Greyhound. It's not a station, but like where the buses actually are. So like the garage for the buses. And we went across the street, and the Red Cross was there. And I mean, it was crazy. And dude, this is Vermont, and like December 10th.
Oh,
I mean, it's
yeah, that's right.
freezing.
You said,
It's
yeah.
like 20
Ooh.
below. And so anyway, whole block burns down. It turns out it was arson. So I lost everything, and all three of us, we lost everything. Interestingly enough, a quick aside, my roommate and his girlfriend, who are married now to this day, he had bought her an engagement ring, and he hadn't asked her yet to marry
No.
him. And that engagement ring was in the fire. Dude, he found it, bro. He found it.
No.
After a couple of days, they let people go back to see if they could salvage anything, and he found that engagement ring, bro. Yeah. And he's still married to her to this day. So anyway,
it's a funny thought experiment, right? Hey, if you had to leave your house because it's on fire, what's the one
what do you
thing,
grab?
two thing, right? I think the real answer is supposed to be nothing, right? You're supposed
No, you grab nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, but you actually got to live that a little bit. Like, okay, I've got 2 seconds. What do I grab? Dog.
What do I grab? Grab the dog. Boom.
Interesting. You said dog and blanket.
And a blanket. Well, yeah, it was cold out, man. It's like 10 below. So anyway, so what ended up happening is, I lose everything. And dude, the one cat that was there for me was my coach. I mean, I just,
of course,
he actually, so my parents were away for Christmas, and I was actually living at the hotel that I worked at. They let me stay there for free for a month until I could get everything, taken care of or whatever. But I get a phone call on Christmas Day, because everybody's gone, for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Most people that go to UVM are not from the area. Most of my teammates were from New Jersey, Connecticut, and everybody's gone. And so he was like, we want you to come over for dinner. Wow. And so he invites me over to his house, and I get Christmas dinner, and of course this is an NCAA violation years later, but he gave me a $50, he gave me $50, he's like, hey, just don't tell anybody.
We love uplifting coaches. I mean, that's the whole reason we started the podcast and our mission and everything we do. Yeah, Ed Kuziak.
Yeah, he's no longer coaching. He's still alive.
Okay, good. Yeah.
He's in the University of Vermont Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it just sounds like he should be. Absolutely.
Yeah, great guy. Yeah, great guy.
Shout out to Ed and Kuziak. Yeah.
Yeah. So we call him Kuz, K-U-Z.
Kuz. Yeah.
And so anyway, so he did that.
That led you to become.
Yeah, and then what? I was just like, what? I want to be that guy. I want to be like that. I want to, And I remember at one of our first practices when we came back, and working out in the wintertime in Vermont is tough, man. I mean, I would literally work out in work boots and just skiing gear. I mean, it's cold. I mean, it was crazy cold, man. So I remember being in practice. I said, Coach, I want to be a coach, man. I want to be a coach. I want to do what you do. I said, maybe I'll even have your job one day. That was kind of the conversation, and we would laugh because I was always
Kevin Hadsell.
Well, I'm quick with a joke, bro. So, so anyway, so that was when I knew that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know how I would go about doing it, but that was when I knew.
What a great example of, and we see this all the time in coaches, and maybe we see it in the regular world too, but boy, do we see it in coaches. A coach who's willing to give something with zero expectations. He didn't do that expecting you to do X, Y, Z. It was like, hey man, you need a helping hand? All right, I'm here.
Yeah.
And because of that, and because as a coach, we have to always be cognizant that someone's always watching you, good and bad, by the way, but someone's always looking to you to be an example. And because of the example that Kuz set, it changed the trajectory of your life. Like, oh, I want to be that. I want to do that. Wow. That is awesome, man. I love it.
Yeah. And so, but like I said, I didn't know how I was going to do that.
Yeah.
But, that's what I want to do. You know what I mean? And so, I'm the kind of person, this is in regular life, this is in any professional life that I've had. If I decide I'm going to do something, then I just do it. Yeah, I'm not afraid to fail.
Mhm.
I just, when I make up my mind about something, it's going to take something huge to change my mind
It's a
about it.
great mindset, being okay to
And
fail.
just do, I mean, to my own fault, I've kind of got a cuckoo switch, man. So like I'm actually genuinely not afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of anything. I've been scared before.
Mhm.
I mean, you can get, but being scared is like you're in that moment you're scared.
Mhm.
Something scares you. Something is happening that you weren't planning for, and there's a potential negative outcome to it. So you're scared in that
Mhm.
moment. You know what I mean? But there's a difference between being scared and being afraid. So being afraid, you're afraid ahead of time. You
Mhm.
know, you
Mhm.
weigh out the consequences, right? And you're too afraid to take the chance
I say it
ahead of
probably
time.
stops you from doing
So
whatever that
yeah, a lot of
filter.
people. So I'm different. I don't have that filter. I don't. I'm
So,
just not afraid to try something.
so that's a good and a bad thing, right? In the sense of,
It's yeah. That's why I said to my own
yeah,
to my own fault.
we have fears and scale. Like there's a almost a I can't think of the term, but a logical, through us growing up as humans,
Mm,
reason why we're fearful of snakes and things like, they used
right.
to all be, I shouldn't say they all used to be poisons, but they used
Yeah.
to be a much bigger threat than they are today in our suburban life that we live now, people.
Right.
So, you kind of grow up that. So the same thing, fears and scares, those are like, they're into us for a reason,
Mm,
for protection.
right.
But for you to either learn that or have some natural, like, I'm okay to fail. Like if I do this and fail, then I'll just do it again.
Yeah.
Or figure out
Now
something.
let's do something else.
Where
Yeah.
did that come from? Again, I go back to the family and friends and
Yeah. I'm
grow up
not really sure where that came from. I mean, I was always and always have been, and really even still today in my adult life, I don't always weigh out the impact of the consequences if it doesn't go right.
right,
So
right.
like even as a kid, I learned to ski on my own. I didn't, I learned to water ski. I learned to I'm not afraid to jump off of cliffs, or I'm not afraid to I would race BMX bikes, and I wasn't afraid of taking jumps. I just was never afraid of what the negative impact could end up being. And if you start really young doing that, then I think that kind of carries with you through time. If you, even when you fail, so I mean, I can't tell you how many times I was in the hospital as a kid, because I was that kid that was always going to the hospital because I'd break my arm or
Mm.
I wipe out in the BMX bike, or, in a motorcycle accident, whatever, all these different things. And at the end of the day, I'm still standing. So it's like, you know what? That wasn't so bad. You know what I mean? I broke my arm, but, broke my
Is there
leg, but,
is there anything as a kid, maybe up to this point, your senior year of college and back,
Mm.
that you look back now, because now we have experience, right? You're, 40
Yeah.
years past that. Is there anything you look back and you're like, you know what? Maybe I should have been afraid of that. I shouldn't have done that BMX jump. Is there anything you'd like, I probably wouldn't have do that again if ever given the chance?
You know what? Not really. I mean, because even looking at my own life through rose colored glasses, hindsight is,
Right.
crystal clear. Even my worst failure or my worst embarrassing moment or whatever it is, I still wouldn't change it, because I am sitting here right now and I have the life that I have. And
Mm.
so I wouldn't go back and change, because if I were to go back, pull an Avengers and go back, and change something about my life, if I were to change that, I have never been afraid of consequence, then I would not have taken the big risks that I've taken in my life to get me to where I am. So I wouldn't change any major failure, no matter what it was.
Yeah, it's an interesting, when you talk about the going back in the past, would you change something? Because when we do that, we typically think of something that went wrong. We broke our arm and we
Right.
think, oh yeah, I'd go back and I wouldn't do that jump and then my arm wouldn't be broken. But we do forget that it could have been worse. Yes,
Yeah.
it could have been better, but it could have been worse. You could have not done that jump, and then you
Yeah.
turned around to ride back into the street and got hit by a car. I mean,
That's right.
forget
That's
that.
exactly right.
It's not
Maybe
all
breaking my arm saved me from something worse. You know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
breaking my leg, So
That's right.
you can't really, you should never, I mean, I don't tell people how to live their life, but my advice to anybody is don't regret anything. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, we all do things that are regrettable. Everybody does. I mean, there's not anybody that hasn't done something that's regrettable. But at the end of the day, everything happens in your life for a reason, and it happens in a certain sequence. And in that moment, you thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, for whatever reason, don't second guess yourself. I mean, in
Absolutely.
that moment, you really thought that was a good idea to take that jump. Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, you took a jump. So your senior year, Coos shows you what a,
Yeah.
selfless coach can be,
Mhm.
and you decide, okay, I want to do this. So what did you said you didn't know what to do. What did you do? What was
Well,
your,
I kind of got into it by accident. Um, so I ended up going to some friends of mine and we moved down to Orlando on a whim. Just hey, let's move to the South, and
this is after graduation?
yeah, and
Yeah.
so I'm like, I feel like I want to go to the South, and I'm finally I had healed up from some different injuries. I was like, it'd be cool to continue to train just to see how good I can be because I'm getting older and stronger, and I'm finally not hurt right now. And so I moved to Orlando, and then while I was in Orlando, I was there for like a couple of weeks, and we were like, hey, let's go to Myrtle Beach, man. I was like, sounds kind of cool, right? So we go to Myrtle Beach and fell in love with it. Like, it was just like, man, this place is nice, bro. So, and it's not as humid as Orlando, and it was just a cool place. So we decided on a whim, myself and two of my buddies and one of my buddies' girlfriends, we decided we were going to move to Myrtle Beach. We're just like, let's move to Myrtle Beach, man. Who cares? So we get jobs. We get a condo, and I get a job waiting tables at like this kind of high-end restaurant right on the ocean that had like a gourmet, had a chef and this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And while I was living there, my next door neighbor that we ended up becoming friends with was three college people also, and so we ended up becoming friends with these guys, and the girl ran cross country at Coastal Carolina, and she's like, yeah, over time we would run together and stuff like this, and then she's like, they're adding track and field because it was a cross country only program to that point, and Coastal Carolina had just become Coastal Carolina University. It previously was USC Coastal Carolina College. So
Really?
yeah, so Coastal Carolina was founded in like 1954. So it's not a very old
Right.
university. And it was a branch of USC. So it
Hmm.
was USC at Coastal Carolina College.
Right.
And it was mostly a commuter school. Only had about 3,100, 3,200 students in it. Had made the jump to Division I a few years before that, and so they were going to add track because they only had cross country,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, man, that'd be cool to kind of help out, and I still wasn't sure like what I wanted to do, like just in life in general, and so I talked to the coaches that were there, Alan Connie, who's the women's coach and continued to coach for a long time, and a guy named Jim Coster, he was the men's coach. So I wrote a letter, like a real letter, because email didn't exist back then. I said, hey, this is what I've done, and I'd be interested in, I really want to become a coach. So they got in touch with me, and they're like, well, we can't pay you or anything. And I was like, you know what? I actually want to go back to college anyway, because I don't want to teach. I don't want to teach in high school. I don't want to teach at all, actually. And I wanted to be a journalist. That was kind of like, I'm not really sure where that kind of came into play, but I just felt like that would be something that I can do. I love to write, and I just thought that would be something that that would be interesting to me.
Yeah.
So I actually enrolled at Coastal and was living in the dorms. I mean, I was only, I was 23, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I was just a regular student. So I moved in as a student and changed my major and was living in the dorms and was basically like a student assistant because my eligibility had run out at this point. So I was just, I was a student and going to class and I would just go to practice every day and help out. And I was actually, at first I was helping out with coaching like sprinters and jumpers and helping them recruit because they didn't have any athletes in the other events because they had just added track and field from having only cross country. And but we were still like a cross country program, and so that was where that was my first introduction into coaching, and I loved every second of it. I mean, I just
like duck to water, just this.
I mean, I loved the whole thing about it. And, it was different back then. I mean, you're talking early 90s and, and this is probably, as you fast forward and my ultimate demise in coaching, eventually is because I started in that way where I was actually just a student in the dorms, I'm partying with the kids on the team and, we're drinking on the weekends. And I mean, I was a coach, but at the same time, I kind of wasn't a coach, you know what I mean? Like because of just the way that I acted or whatever, you know what I mean? And so what ended up happening is that after that first year, when I was like living in the dorms and stuff, then I was like, because I was like a volunteer assistant basically. And I was like, is there any way I can like, I don't know, get paid, And,
nice.
and so they were like, well, we don't have a lot of money, but let me see what we can do. Right. So what ended up happening is they went to the athletic director and they say, Kevin, really, cause I helped I really, even though we were distance minded, I really made an impact right away. Just my whole attitude and my personality. And I was there to motivate people and to just kind of, and to learn. I was just constantly learning from the coaches and just, I was like a sponge for knowledge.
So, you and I have known each other since 02, 03.
Mm-hmm.
And for people that know you or have seen you speak or think they know you from internet and what have you, you're very outgoing. You're an extrovert. Like, would you agree? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Have you been consistent like through high school and college now at Coastal? Were you extroverted all the way through?
I'm always that guy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've just always been very, like I said, quick with a joke and, very extremely outgoing and just friendly. I'm the kind of guy that doesn't, really have a whole lot of enemies in his life. I've just always gotten along with everybody, which is,
we'll
kind of rare, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say there are none.
Yeah. Okay.
But so for the most part, because, I treat people right. I mean, I don't ever mean to hurt anybody, even if I end up ultimately hurting somebody's feelings. It's not because I intentionally go out of my way to hurt people's feelings.
So you're using this personality and this extroversion. You're creating positive change at Coastal Carolina.
Yeah. And like, great at recruiting, even right off of the gun, easy to talk to and easy to talk to athletes and whatnot. So what they did was they created a position for me at Coastal. So it was half coaching and half sports information because I was, a journalism major. Right. And like, this was a way to combine my worlds of athletics and this desire to write and whatnot. And I actually started my own publication. And so going way back, and there's probably some people that are listening to this podcast or watching the movie that were actually subscribers to my publication way back in the day, which was Southern Track and Field. And so I started my own publication years ago. and it was called Southern Track and Field. So like it would come out once a week, just like Cross Country Express did back then with Walt Murphy, and it went out by fax to some people and it went out by mail to others, and it had results from just the South and had rankings. And I mean, I started all of this. I had the Big South Conference, which Coastal was in back then. They didn't have anybody keeping the weekly rankings. So I did it. I said, I'll do it. If no one's going to keep them, So I kept the weekly rankings and, in all the event areas. And I mean, and I've always been like this as a person, is you see a need, you fill a need. You know what I mean?
That's so interesting. I did the same thing for the TAC, the TAAC. When I was at Troy, I was a journalist. This is a little scary, actually, Kevin. I did not know this. I was a journalism major as well. And same thing. There was no, top 10 of each event in our conference as we got into our conference meets. I was like, oh, well, I'll just collect them all and I'll put them together. And I faxed them out to all the schools on Monday or Friday or what have you. Yeah, probably Monday. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I was doing that. And so as I was finishing my journalism degree, they paid for all of my tuition for it. And I got a stipend. And that was how we put it together,
Wow.
And then, so I did that for the next 4 years at Coastal. And we actually, so now I'm less and less involved with non-distance events, and I'm becoming more and more involved in the distance events.
How so?
Okay. And
why?
meaning that, so what happened was Coach Connie back then at Coastal Carolina was actually, he was a special education teacher at North Myrtle Beach High School at the same time. So he wasn't there during the day. He could only come in for practice. And so I was handling the day-to-day at the office for Coach Connie, who was, at the high school until he retired from teaching and then went full-time at Coastal. And so I was the guy there every day, and we were mostly distance runners. And I started really early on. I was fascinated by the distance events. And really kind of what fascinated me about it was that it seemed like there were so many different trains of thought in how to train people and how to get people better, that I became kind of obsessed with learning all these different things. So I started, and my obsession was within the context that why does everybody seem to follow the one way of training or the other? That was my thing. It was like, why are people training just like Bowerman did? Or why are people training just like Jack Daniels did? Or Arthur Lydiard? In my head, it's like, why can't it be a mixture of all of these things? Why is everybody just picking one or the other?
Not having a distance background, did you not see those same kind of parallels to sprinting or jumping or throwing? And if not, is it because on the, there was a big jogging boom and distance running boom that had a lot of books? There was less books that are in public purview for jumping and sprinting. Where in the distance, and I had to put jogging in there, but in the distance jogging, there was a lot of books.
Galloway. And the Gallo joggers, I think that what it was, first of all, we didn't really have any non-distance people for the most part. We had some.
That played into it.
And the thing is, we were seeing tremendous success in the distances. I mean, while I was there, we ended up going from just being some Big South school to my last year there, we were ranked as high as 22nd in the NCAA Division I women's pool, and almost went to the NCAA. This is back when there was only 22 teams that qualified. Mm-hmm. We were the first team not to make it in '96, and we got a perfect score at the conference championship in '96. And so in any event, I was fascinated with this whole concept, as I'm looking at different coaches and I see how they train and I see, and it seemed like there were strong points for each of it. But my biggest thing was, why is it that it seems like each of these training programs they'll work really well for some kids. They'll kind of work for others. And then you've got these other kids that don't really get better. And then you move to another system, same thing. Another system, same thing. So in my head, even back then, I'm like, why isn't there a way to train people so that everybody gets better? Like, I'm just like, I can't be the only person that's thinking this,
and a fear of that. I do not, first of all, I definitely was never a distance coach. And second of all, it has been 15 years since I've coached. So, the old saying that I've forgotten more about coaching.
Yeah.
True, because I've forgotten everything. I don't know anything.
Right.
But when you say, and I don't necessarily want to get into, we don't talk necessarily about training, but
sure.
In there, it's like, why can't you create a system where everyone gets better? Well,
right.
Isn't that impossible in the sense of the individuality, the different factors that, whether it's genetics of a kid, their background in running, et cetera? Were you really trying to find the golden or the fountain of youth that didn't exist?
Well, without going into, great detail about it, over time, I had developed my own training system, because essentially the way I looked at it was it's just like I run my whole life. And basically what it is why not? Why not? Who says that somebody's not capable of something? Who says that that you can't do this and this at the same time? Who says? We make our own rules.
I normally would argue on that, but a topic that we discussed a little bit before we hit the record button was Brooks Johnson and the conversation we had with him here on the Connections podcast. And I told you how he really changed my mind in a lot of aspects. And one of the things that he touched on is exactly what you're saying there, getting through these barriers. That of course someone's going to jump 8 feet in the high jump and 8 feet 1, 8 feet 2, because it's done before. Someone's already done it. So why can't you jump 8.5, 8.6 one day? To your point, that's a great point. Why
not?
I say, why can't you do it? Well, why can't you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, to Reader's Digest, that whole part of the conversation here, by the time that I resigned, I really feel like we had created a situation where every kid was getting better. Mm-hmm. And that was because the training system itself was dynamic. And in the fact that, like, if I'm trying to accomplish some particular goal, in terms of threshold or VO2 max training or whatever, I've got these certain kids that are really going to do well if we do the workouts this particular way. I've got other kids, which would be like as an example, like a more of a Lydiard type of way. I've got these other kids that might do better if this was a little bit more of a Bowerman type of setup. Because at the end of the day, all these different coaches experience success with different kids. So, which means it works. It's going to work with a certain type of kid. And because I'm at a mid-major school, I'm recruiting kids from all over the country to come to this mid-major school that are going to come from so many different backgrounds. I'm not an elite program. I mean, we had gotten really good, obviously, but I'm still not going to get the cream of the crop. So I've got to figure a way, how can I grab all these kids with all these different backgrounds and make them all better, so that I can take a team, which we did. I mean, I took 3 straight teams, the NCAA's at large, which is tough to do at a school like Toledo. And it was with all American kids, and it was with all kids that were developed. Every single kid. Nobody was a high school All-American. A lot of these kids were just 5.0, 11.0 kids. Mm-hmm. Almost all of them were, from all different backgrounds. So it had to be a system that was dynamic. And that's what I learned over those years.
So let's not skip ahead too much. So you're obsessed with this as you go through Coastal Carolina, through the different systems. And this is what Coastal becomes very good at, is they're a distance-based program.
Yeah.
How long were you at Coastal, and what was 96, 97 school year,
that was my last year there, because what ended up happening is the school was continuing to grow and the athletic department was continuing to grow. Okay. They were starting to add sports, and so I was half sports information and I was half coaching. Well, they came to me and said, we need for because sports information was two guys, me and the sports information director. That was it for the entire athletic department. No interns, no anything, just two dudes. And I was only half time, So they made the decision that they were going to create a full-time assistant SID job. And of course they offered me the job. They said, listen, but you'd have to give up coaching.
Right.
It's got to be full. It has to be an all or none. And I said, you know what? I really want to just focus on coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, I was like, I'm going to look for just a coaching job.
Mm-hmm.
And Willie Wood, who was the director at Columbia for a long time, and he was at Bradley, and he owns a recruiting service now.
Mm-hmm.
But Willie was at UNC Asheville before he was at Columbia, and he was, and so he was somebody within the conference that I'd become friends with. And he's like, hey man, I'd really love for you to come up to Columbia. And so I took the job as assistant coach at Columbia, and moved to New York City. That was in '97.
Now, I don't know much about Columbia. It's funny, our senior VP of sales here, who was a football player of all things at Iowa and Nebraska, he did his MBA at Columbia. So,
it's big time.
Yeah. I was like, okay, boss. I can get there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's a smart joker there. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's very as you're going there to coach distance, it's very landlocked, right? There's you're on the streets all the time. And it was a distance program. I mean, some decent kids in other event areas, but you recruit in volume in the Ivy League, primarily. And so I was only there for 1 year. We had some nice success. I left a program at Coastal that was ranked as one of the top teams in the country. Went to Columbia, and we were able to take the men's team in cross country had finished last the previous year in the Ivy League in the HEPS. Back then, Navy and Army ran in the same championship as the Ivy League schools. So a lot of people probably don't realize that now, but that's why it's called the HEPS for both cross country and track. So it's not called the Ivy League championships. It's called the heptagonals. And it's called that because way back in the day, there were other schools in the Ivy League that competed, including Army and Navy. Okay. So in the heptagonals in '96, they were dead last. In '97, we were actually the runner-up. 1 year later, same guys, and we took two guys to the NCAA championships as individuals. And then that summer, after being at Columbia for a year, which was cool. I mean, I loved it. I loved the city. I'm a redneck from Vermont, but I love the city, And so I had applied for two jobs. So the interesting thing about me also is I have applied for very few jobs in my life. In the world of coaching, I didn't really even apply at Coastal. I mean, I sent a letter, I applied at Columbia and was hired. I applied for only two jobs while I was at Columbia. That was Brown and Toledo. And I was a finalist at both, went and interviewed at both, and I was offered the Toledo job and took it. While I was at Toledo, I only applied for one other job the entire time. And I was offered that job and turned it down. That was Vanderbilt back in 2006, I think it was. So I've really applied for very few jobs over time. But so it was just a one and done at Columbia?
Yeah, one and done. Yeah.
What did you enjoy? Why wouldn't you have stayed there long? I know Toledo being a head coaching job, that
was really it. I mean, I would have stayed at Columbia. It's a different world. I mean, it's a different kind of coaching. It's a different kind of recruiting.
Mhm.
You know, at Columbia, the way that we were kind of set up, and any Ivy League coach I would think would still agree with me. It's a different kind of recruiting. You have such a small window of time to recruit kids because of NCAA rules. Now, rules have kind of changed over time since then. This is 1997, but they had what was called the AI, and an athlete was not, that was the academic index. So AI was this chart that was based on your class rank, your test scores, and your GPA. And each thing was assigned a certain point value, and you could not admit a student athlete under a certain AI. Okay. So you had X number of spots that you could go to bat for at admissions. But there was only a certain number. And so you can't, it was an Ivy League rule that no athlete can be under a certain AI. So you had to start with literally thousands of athletes. And then kind of the rule of thumb is kind of like this rule of halves, right? So you start with all these athletes that will return your questionnaire because it's back for internet, right?
Right.
So they return the questionnaire. So you got this stack. Well, half of them are ultimately not going to be interested in coming to New York City. You know what I mean? You got half of those aren't going to get in anyway. You know what I mean? You got half of those that won't come to visit, and you've got, you just keep working your way down in the halves until you finally have the class that you sign, which is like 25. But you'll start with like 5,000 kids. But you only have until the application deadline, which is the first weekend in December. No one can be admitted after that point.
Really?
No application can be submitted after that. There is no late recruiting in the Ivy League.
Right.
Now, maybe it's changed now, but I doubt it. Yeah. So you've got from August 1st to December 1st to start with like 5,000 recruits. And you got to whittle your way down, bro. So conversations on the phone, it's not like recruiting at a non-Ivy League school. A non-Ivy League school, I'm developing a relationship with these kids, with their parents, and, having 30-minute conversations on the phone, With an Ivy League kid, you don't have time to make all those phone calls. You've got to get, cut to the chase, and you're going to apply, you're not going to apply. I mean, it's just really, it's different. So, and then coaching in Columbia is a challenge anyway, because it's in the middle of New York City.
Is it safe to say if a kid is being recruited at Columbia and like they're interested in, they've got the marks and everything, that your competition is all those other type of Ivies and maybe a stand, depending on their levels,
Yes. Yeah. So depending upon how good they are, your competition, if they are legitimate Division I recruits, then your competition almost exclusively is the other Ivies and your public Ivies, so to speak. So you've got your University of Texas or Stanford, Michigan,
like
your
super high, Michigan,
super high academic standards.
Troy University, Vanderbilt, those kind of schools.
Troy, is that what?
Yeah. I said Troy. Come on, it's my alma mater. We used to call ourselves the Harvard of the South. So
it's got to be, man. How can it not be, bro?
Picking Northwestern, Vandy, Troy.
Is Troy a private school?
I'm sure I could have made that a joke somewhere. No. I don't think I could have gotten into school in a private school. So it's.
Well, man, don't sell yourself that short, bro.
It's open enrollment. Let me just say. At least to get me in there back in the.
Yeah, I read it. I mean, that's really. But then for the kids because you obviously have, it is a participation school-ish. I mean, there's really. You're not really going to cut kids, you know what I mean? Because they're paying $60,000 a year. What are you going to do? Tell them no, So for those kids, kind of like your developer kids, then the competition may be your Colbys or your Amherst
Oh, yeah.
colleges,
Right.
your higher level Division III schools. You
Hmm.
know,
I didn't even think about those, right? MITs,
yeah, I mean
etc. Yeah, yeah,
that's that world as well.
yeah.
And so anyway, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the challenge of it. You know, it was a unique place too because you had to teach. So
Did you teach
I don't know if they
journalism?
still have that rule, but all the coaches taught.
What
So
What did you teach?
I taught physical education
Hey, is that
at
right?
Columbia.
Back to the
Was
old
it?
physical
Yeah,
education days.
yeah, it's crazy.
Because Columbia is a really good journalism school, if I remember correctly. So you didn't
Well,
teach any.
yeah, and it was an interesting thing because there was back then a requirement at Columbia. You couldn't graduate from Columbia unless you could pass a swim test. This is a really, I mean, I don't know that anybody, I don't know that they still do it. I would imagine it's not a rule anymore, but there was a physical education requirement at Columbia. Okay. So all kids took physical education, but you had to learn to swim unless, I mean, it's a life skill that everybody should have, honestly. At least tread water. I'm going to say you got to be able to swim laps, but you
See,
got to be able to survive
yeah.
a flood, you know. And so engineering students didn't have to take swimming. Some kid had sued
Because
years before that.
they'd be able to build a bridge out of that flood. They're engineers, so they would figure a way
Yeah,
out.
exactly. Why you don't need to swim. They'll figure a way out of it. And so so I was teaching like strength and conditioning physical education class, and and like it was funny because it would be like literally the most unathletic people you've ever met. I mean, just almost to the point where you're stunned that they're functioning at that level. You know what I mean? They're
Now,
so smart.
these guys or gals are also now called CEO and owner
Yeah, that's right.
there,
They just
so
pay somebody to figure it out,
they're
bro.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I mean, to the point where I once had a kid, no exaggeration, this is not hyperbole at all, that when he ran, it was almost like he was using the same arm, same leg.
Oh no.
You know, like so uncoordinated that couldn't figure out it was opposite arm, opposite leg, you know. I mean, it was crazy, man. So anyway, I was teaching that. I enjoyed that, you know, because it was a nice break from, you know, coaching. And
Yeah.
but
I was living in New York City. The cost of living, I don't know
man, it
how.
was crazy.
I know it's
So they had a building that the university basically owned,
okay.
and it was two, I don't want to say high rises, but it was like two side by side 10-story buildings, and it was all apartments.
Mm.
And I mean, they were really nice. So you're overlooking the Hudson River, and it was myself, a guy named Matt Munson. Matt was my roommate, and we coached together. Matt ended up, after that same year that I left for Toledo, he left to go to East Carolina, and he ended up being the ECU head coach for a while. He's no longer coaching because he married into the honey train. He got he got married to the volleyball coach at ECU, who now and has been for over 20 years the women's volleyball coach at Western Michigan. And in the MAC, volleyball is a revenue sport, and so he's a stay-at-home dad. He's got the life, man. Yeah. And so anyway, we were roommates, and then my best friend, we call him Kramer, but his real name is Rob. So Kramer was working at a PR firm, and so the three of us shared a 2-bedroom. We divided the living room, which you do in New York City. If you have a large living room, a lot of times they'll put up a faux wall and section it off so that you can cut down on your rent. And so the three of us lived in this 2-bedroom that we converted into a 3-bedroom. And I want to say we were paying like $600 a month each in rent, which is nothing in New York City because the university was paying for the other half of it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So that's how we were able to live. But New York, I mean, you can't go out without dropping a C note. I mean, you're dropping $100 at any time you go out, and back then, dude, I was drinking all the time, bro. I mean, I was like, I was coach and I was coaching, but man, I was the wrong cat at that age to be in New York City. So
like drinking so much, like it was an issue. It was a problem. Like looking back now.
No, the only issue was the money. it wasn't like I was drinking because I was addicted to booze. I was just addicted to having fun, man. So yeah, it was a different lifestyle in New York. So it was good to move out and move back to the South. And so what happened was that summer we were only paid 10 months a year there at Columbia. And so in the summer, you had to have a job anyway. So I moved back to Myrtle Beach that summer, and was waiting tables back at that restaurant. And that's when the interviews came in for Toledo and for Brown.
So I lost track from Vermont to coastal, or Orlando coastal.
To Columbia.
Coastal. Where is this miracle dog? Where is Shitty the dog? What happened?
Oh, he ended up, that whole thing was my buddy who married his girlfriend. They got Shitty.
Okay,
that was
Good. I was a little concerned. I was like, wait a minute, this.
No way that dog's alive still, but yeah. 30 years later.
Back in coastal, waiting tables, interviewing. Toledo, and you get Toledo, University of Toledo over in Ohio on the MAC, and it's the head coach. You're the head coach of was it?
No, I was cross country head coach. Yeah, so I was actually the first full-time cross country head coach that the school ever had. It was always it was separate programs back then, and sprint based mostly. I mean, women's cross country before I got there had existed for 18 years. And they were last or second to last all 18 years in the MAC. And that was back when there was 13 schools in the MAC. There's 12 now, but well, not all sponsor it, but yeah. Right. But so I was the first head coach, and I was coaching men's and women's. Now, we ended up dropping the men, a few years later. Men's track. I mean, we still had men's cross country, but yeah. So the program that I inherited, had never had any success. It was always first or last, second.
So you're the head cross country, so head distance coach.
Yeah.
Did you get full autonomy? Did you get to, as you continue to develop your system, you get to use your system?
Yeah. Anything. Yeah. So the way it worked out was, I got really good advice from, my coaching friends like Coach Connie and Stan Rosenthal, who was at UNC Asheville and then South Carolina, and of course Willie, Wood. The main thing that everybody said is you need to go in and you need to ask for certain things. One was my own scholarships. So on the women's side, I was given 6 full scholarships to work with. And they need to be your athletes all year long. You decide, they answer to you, you answer to the athletic director, and so that was the way it was set up. So I actually, even though I worked with both coaches, I wasn't, the head track coach wasn't my boss. My boss was the athletic director, and we worked together.
Because I'm always seeing, the majority of coaches, the head distance coach is the cross country coach, but the head track coach, whether he or she coaches throws, jumps, sprints, is the head cross country coach because they're over the program. And I always thought that was kind of unfair. I'm like, you don't do anything. I mean, that's an overstatement because obviously you're still allotting scholarships and budgeting and things like that.
Yeah.
The distance coach is running the cross country season. Shouldn't he or she be the head cross country coach?
Yeah, since I'm out of coaching, I mean, it's easier for me to say that a lot of it's an interesting setup at some schools because you have somebody who's the director of cross country and track and field, and then you'll have a head cross country coach, and sometimes and I would say more often than not, this is not always an amicable relationship. I think that there's um, distance coaches will always say that they don't get enough scholarships, or I mean, there's always going to be something,
Fiddle throws
and
coaches.
right. Yeah, throws coaches, they get the least amount of love usually. But so that was, I wanted to avoid that when I got there. And so the only way to avoid it is to make sure that your supervisor is actually the athletic director.
Yeah.
And that way, if, so when it came to entering people in the meets, it was what I wanted to do. It wasn't what the track, even though it was track season, these are athletes that I'm responsible for. And I actually, one big aspect of my entire coaching philosophy is to never run somebody that's hurt, ever. So my philosophy has always been that if you need to tape it, then why are you even racing? I mean, if you can't race at a level that's indicative of your fitness because you have to tape all these things up, then what are you really doing? Because at the end of the day, there's more important things than track and field.
And since you're, I'm gonna say, pulling the weight, leading the distance squad even during track season, but you still are pulling on the same rope, right? When it comes to, you're trying to win an indoor conference.
Yeah, we're trying to, so be successful.
There's still like a negotiation, if you will. Like, hey, if we double this kid up, we got a shot, and if we don't,
and
we have
and
no
of course
shot.
I'm always up for doing that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the goal is the same: to do the best you can.
Right.
Without overextending the distance kids, because a lot of times you end up with less points by going for more events. Because it's just too much stress. But really, what ended up happening was that we just weren't really successful in track. Also, I mean, a big part of it was we just didn't have the numbers. So, like when I got there was only 4 girls on the team. For cross country
distance team.
So I had to have kids that were like 400, 800 kids come over and run. So, and like a couple of like 22-minute girls walk on, so that first year, just so we could have a team score, and then in track we were struggling with the numbers as well. And to be fair to the head coach of track at that time, it wasn't their fault. I can look back now because I have the power of, hindsight. When you look back, they weren't treated very well. Now, it was in a different administration at Toledo than there is now. The head coach, the athletic director at Toledo way back then, was just not a good human being. I mean, I'm just being straight up real. I mean, I don't even know if he's still alive, but he was a former NFL guy. He went to Penn State. He was a total football guy, and he just wasn't a good human, and both of my fellow coaches were African-American coaches, and I really think that he just purposely didn't give them any support. I mean, it was just really, it's even more sad now as an adult. You look back and you're like, man, I can't believe somebody would treat somebody like that. You know what I mean? Set somebody up literally for failure. I mean, it's one thing if you don't care, because a lot of athletic directors don't care about cross country and track. Sadly, I mean, that's bad enough as it is. But when you have an athletic director that will go out of their way to make things harder for somebody, and those are my friends. I mean, I love both of those coaches. They're great people, and they're out of coaching now.
Well, no matter
and they ended up getting out of coaching because they were treated so bad.
Yeah, no matter what position you're in, whether you have an authority position over someone else or even peer-to-peer, if you are going out of your way to hold someone back, like that's just It's petty, etc. I mean,
Terrible.
it's
And
yeah.
they were
So
great coaches. They really were, and great human beings too. Anybody that knows them knows that they're great human beings.
how were you doing on the cross country side? Was there an immediate? You said you had four girls
Yeah,
when you started. Was there?
the thing about Toledo was when I was interviewing there, I felt like it was this hidden gem. I kind of felt like there's something about this place that I think can be really attractive. I mean, if you're going to have a distance program, there's certain things about your school that need to be in place, in my opinion. I mean, maybe
Like
somebody
what?
can prove me wrong. Well, I mean, it needs to be a school that distance kids would be attracted to going to. I mean, it's got to have some really good academic programs. Okay. Um, it's got to have it. It's got to have a nice campus. I mean, I know I'm generalizing, but this is a big part of it, and I was mostly a woman's coach, because in the men's side, we just didn't have any money. And then of course they dropped men's track,
Mm-hmm.
so this was going to be a women's program really.
Right.
So it's got to be a safe campus. No parent is going to send their kid to a school that has a reputation for being in a bad area,
Mm-hmm.
and University of Toledo is actually in a gorgeous area. I mean, it's Ottawa Hills is actually the village that it is in, which is out on the outskirts of Toledo, and it's beautiful. The campus. I walk across campus, and I'm just like, Jesus, this place is gorgeous. And then you have to have places to train. You've got to have trails. You have to have access to trails. And right down the road from the school, we have a metro park. Ohio's amazing. They've got metro parks everywhere. They got a metro park right down the road from the school, 12 miles of wooded trails. Gorgeous, Then, and that was only like a 10-minute drive. That's on the other side of Ottawa Hills. You go a little further down, you got another place got about 8 miles of trails. You go a little further, you got 30 miles of trails. I mean, it's just, you have all these places to train. And so I'm looking at like all these places to train. It's got a track only facility, which a lot of schools don't have. It's no longer track only. Soccer's in there now, but it was track only then. And it's a gorgeous campus. It's safe. It's got good academic programs. It's got nursing, which is a big draw for women. Even if they don't stay in nursing, it's a draw. And it's fully funded, So I was like, man, this place could be good, Yeah. And I remember on the interview, I was in my last interview with the senior women's administrator. Lori Turner was her name. And Lori's the athletic director now at, I want to say Seattle Pacific or Seattle Lutheran, one of the two. Mm-hmm. I said, you're going to think that I'm crazy, but if you hire me, I think that we'll be nationally ranked within 5 years. I think we'll be that good.
It's a program that had 4 kids coming back.
4 kids and had never finished higher than second to last.
Remember
in the MAC.
You were not afraid. So you were not afraid to make this.
I just told her straight up.
That's a bold statement here.
Yeah. And I almost think that she hired me because of that, because who else would be that crazy enthusiastic about that school? What I mean?
Fine line between confidence and cockiness, right?
Man, that was probably cocky, to be honest. But
I was gonna say fine line there.
Yeah, yeah. So we enjoyed some I would say fairly immediate success. So back then the MAC had 13 schools. So my first year we were dead last. We were 13 out of 13. I got there a week before school started.
What year is this?
What's that?
What year is this?
Oh, this is 1998. 98.
Okay.
So 98, we are 13 out of 13. We set the record for the worst score in MAC history. And so it was like 358 points.
Got to start somewhere.
That's pretty impressive.
I mean, 358.
350, you're averaging 70th place.
Let's say it's 13 teams. That's a lot of teams still.
Yeah, but still, I mean, you only have, 91 scoring opportunities.
Right, yeah.
And our average score is 70th. So 71st. So we get dead last, and we don't even go to the region because I knew it was going to be a disaster. We didn't even go to the region. So then my second year, we go from 13th in the MAC to 8th. We go to the NCAA regionals and we finish 15th.
And you're in a extremely tough region. It was the
Great Lakes, bro.
Great Lakes. Yeah.
And so we go from 13th to 8th. We go from not running to 15th. My next year, we go from 8th to 4th in the MAC. We go to the region, and we ran crazy out of our mind, and we finished, I want to say, 6th. And we had the individual runner-up. So there was a girl at Wisconsin back then named Erica Palmer. She was NCAA champion.
Mm-hmm.
Erica won the region. We had a freshman from Finland that I recruited named Tuula Laitinen, and Tuula was the region runner-up. And we finished 6th, and we actually beat Michigan, who was the Big Ten runner-up that year. Wow. So we were only 4th in the conference, but we were 6th in the region.
So going from 13, 8, 4 in this initial 3 years, was it more coaching or more recruiting? Remember, you had 4 kids. So was it just?
I would say, recruiting was a huge part of that. I mean, recruiting is a huge part of coaching, of course, at the college level. So, but at the same time, it was the same kids also. So I did have an influx of talent, of course, but I never gave up on those kids that were freshmen when I first got there. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like I was replacing anyone. I was recruiting, but making people better. Okay.
Mm-hmm. It was a combination.
It was a combination.
Which, if you're going to do it right, it should be a combination.
It should always be. Yeah. And then, so we went 13 to 8 to 4, and then the next year we won it. And so we won, and we were ranked nationally that year in the top. Back then, the rankings were top 25. They weren't top 30 like they are now. So we were ranked in the top 25.
Was your SWS still there?
Yeah, still there. Yeah, and I said I'd do it in 5 years. We did in 4. And so we won that year, and we were the first team not to make it to the NCAAs when you did the old Colas calculator, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then we won it again. And, so from that point, we were winning. But the nice thing about that first team that won was that a great chunk of that team were kids that were freshmen, scoring kids. So a perfect example in that group was Sarah Vergotti. So Sarah Vergotti is the Ohio State women's coach. Sarah Vergotti was a freshman when I first got there, and a bit of a knucklehead. Okay. And she was eager, and it was a great, interesting story about her, because at her freshman year at the outdoor track championships, which were at Central Michigan, she got the sympathy clap in the 10,000 meters. So she was second to last.
Wait a minute, right? Sarah did? Because I know Sarah, well, now I know her obviously as the Ohio State coach, but Sarah was
one of the best runners in the country. Yeah. So she didn't run cross country in high school because up in Michigan they played basketball, right? And so learning how to run cross country was, brand new to her, but she was fearless. I mean, that was one big thing about me as a coach, me in real life, and what I think that I did a nice job of teaching kids or getting them to believe in was to not fear failure. Like I said, I'm not afraid to fail at anything at all. And so I don't expect everybody to be like that, but you can at least try to put your inhibitions aside. Try to work on not being afraid ahead of time of something. Maybe it's not going to feel so good, but you know what? It's not supposed to feel good, right? So once you can learn how to embrace the fact that it's not pain, it's just simply discomfort, and that feeling of being uncomfortable, you can actually get to a point where you're comfortable being uncomfortable. Okay. And so Sarah, like I said, at the at the MAC outdoor was sympathy clap in the 10,000. And it was at Central Michigan, and her parents were there, and they lived right up the road, you know. And I told, and she was crying, you know, she was upset, we were standing off to the side, and I told her that she needed to watch the awards ceremony for the 10,000. So you got to, you know, that's how we are. You're going to watch it because you need to respect the fact that those girls, you know, are where they are. So we're there, and I said, listen, man, let me tell you something. I said, if you believe in yourself, because I believe in you, if you believe in yourself, the next time that somebody claps for you is when you're going to be on the stand. Don't ever let somebody give you the sympathy clap. And I said, they're going to be clapping for you because you're on that stand, right? You want to become one of those girls. And I use that term all through my coaching career. You want to be one of those girls. And when I say those girls, it's those girls that people look up to, those girls that a young freshman at some other school is like, you know what? I really wish I was like those girls, right? So fast forward to Sarah's 5th year. Because of a scheduling issue, matter of fact, the scheduling issue was the fact that Ball State back then couldn't host a track meet because the school wasn't putting any money into refurbishing the track, right?
How dare you blame us?
I know, dude. So they had to switch the site. And so they switched the site to Central Michigan, same place where she was as a freshman.
Yeah, I remember this.
And the very first night, what do they have? The 10,000. And who wins the 10,000 by lapping almost the entire field?
Yeah, right. Wow.
And her parents are there. It's a great story.
Dude, in the same place as well. That's what's great about it, you know, because you can visualize. Yeah.
And she kind of embodied that whole fearlessness, you know. And obviously, it didn't hurt that we had Brianna Shook transfer in. So, you know, Brianna Shook.
Where'd she transfer from?
She actually went to Miami of Ohio. So,
okay. All right, yeah.
Another interesting story is that there was a MAC rule that you could not transfer from one MAC school to another. And she was actually the first non-revenue person since they had made that rule to transfer from one to another and be eligible right away. So she was eligible right away. So Bree, the first year that we won the MAC in cross country and were nationally ranked, Bree was the individual champion, you know, and then she won it again the following year. And that was the year she set the American record in the steeple. But kind of like my entire philosophy behind cross country and it's the umbrella of how we train, you know, was I always have felt as though, like I always wondered why some kids, distance kids, would run these really great times on the track and then just not be able to put it together in cross country. They see that all the time. And my feeling had always been that if you train for cross country all year long, because I don't train for time. We don't wear watches. We train for minutes and not miles and these kinds of things. The entire thing is about how you feel, you know. And cross country to me is like track and reverse. You know, in track, you know, you go out at a fairly even pace and then, you know, you go as hard as you can at the end. Well, cross country is a little different. Cross country is almost like you go all out, you know, and then you hang on, and the person that slows down the least is, you know, the champion at the end, you know. So the entire training philosophy was embodied that, and our entire racing philosophy, if you talk to any MAC coach while I was in coaching or even coaches around the country, the Toledo thing, you knew the race was going to get out if Toledo was there. I mean, that was just, it was a given. The race is going to get out and they're going to push the pace, because our entire philosophy was, and these girls, these women embodied it, was that even if we make it harder for ourselves, we're going to make it harder for everybody else. You know, like if we lose in the end, it ain't going to be for a lack of trying, man. You know, we're going to go all out.
What
And so,
year around this time, when did you become the head track and field coach?
so when we dropped men's track and field in 2003,
Mhm.
um, they had let the track coach go, and the women's track coach actually resigned. She actually had moved, um, and got out of coaching, and they made me the director of the whole thing in 2003. So at that point,
2003. Yeah. Okay.
and so that, we had some lean years. So we had that success at first, that steady climb. Then we were winning or finishing second for a bunch of years in a row, and then I actually had a few years where things went downhill a little bit, and where we were finishing, like fourth or fifth in the conference. And I think that, and part of it was out of my hands. Part of it was that, they had torn up our track, and for 2 years we didn't have a track facility while they were rebuilding a new one. And, but that's just an excuse, really. I mean, the real reality was that I just wasn't putting, I had become comfortable in my position. I had become complacent, where I was. And at the same time also, um, I think that I was I wasn't the same coach as I was at the end, meaning that I was arrogant. And I actually kind of think that I made a lot of mistakes on the recruiting side of things, because I thought that, well, hey, we got this nationally ranked team, and we had an American record holder, and why, so I'm going after the wrong kids,
Did you like try to go?
yeah, too high, shoot too
Yeah.
high,
Mhm.
and I finally, so fast forward, I end up hiring Sarah to come back to be my assistant coach. And when she came back, it was funny because at first she was coaching at Manhattan College, and when she came back, within the first few days, she's just like, "Dude, who are you? Like, who are you, man? Like, you're not the coach that right now that we had. Like,
Hmm.
who are you?" And I was just, I don't know, I just kind of lost a whole, I'd lost myself. I kind of lost, I didn't lose the fire for coaching. It's just that I had made a bunch of mistakes in the recruiting process, and then I just become, I think, angry, angry at myself, and this was coming across in my coaching. I'm an amiable, outgoing, and suddenly I'm just not that guy, you know. And to Sarah's credit, she reminded me
Hmm.
of who I was,
It's good when we have
and
peers like that. That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, somebody that I used to coach, and not, and then,
Yeah.
so I was like, you know what, you're right. I said, listen, even if we've got to get worse over the next year or so, I want to rethink this whole thing. And so I spent the summer of 2008, I think it was. Yeah, 2008. I went back to my old self, where I was this young guy eager to learn. Um, because I had gotten to the point in 2002, unfortunately, where I just thought I knew it all at that point. I was just kind of like that guy, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And you never want to be that guy. You always need to be learning.
So in the background, there's a couple things that are going on at your life. Let's start with around 2005ish. You tell us
Mm.
about the time. I want to say it's a little known about you. There were articles and such that were written about it, but you actually, well, you tell us you became guardian
Instant
of your
dad.
sister. Yeah, instant dad. Tell us
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
this.
So what happened was, in 2004, um, my sister's husband died unexpectedly of a heart attack. I mean, he was only 42,
Mm,
and he passed away. It was sad. I mean, he passed away when they were on family vacation,
mm,
and they were at my parents were there, and I get a phone call like 3 o'clock in the morning. It's my mom. She's crying, and
mm,
said that, Andy's dead. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I just couldn't wrap my head around it, and she's giving him CPR and kids are there crying. I mean, it's just a worst case scenario, and my sister, she had at that time a 1.5, a 3.5, and a 4 and a 5.5-year-old kids.
Yeah.
And sadly, my sister, 10 years before that, almost.
Hey, if you can hear me, we've lost your audio for some reason. Give us a minute here. He's checking on his audio. It says you're muted now. You there?
There?
Yeah, so pick back up. You said your sister, you said 10 years earlier. I think that's where you
Oh, 10 years earlier, almost exactly to the month, that same sister had buried a child. So she had a little girl named Caitlin that had died of leukemia at only 2.5 years old. So my sister at that time was 33 years old or so, and she'd already buried a baby and a husband, and she had 3 little kids. And so she dove into it, just this terrible depression.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, listen, man, everybody's got their breaking point, bro, and so she was an alcoholic, and she couldn't take care of herself, let alone kids. And it was sad. I had the kids up. At the time I was living with my girlfriend and just, living the, carefree life or whatever. And so the kids came up to visit. I took them back, and we were supposed to meet my sister at like a McDonald's or something to drop them off halfway. She doesn't show up. So, man, what the heck's going on? Well, come to find out, she had gotten on the interstate going the wrong way, but she didn't quite get on the interstate. She was entering onto an off ramp, and a fire truck just happened to be coming down also and put its lights on and pulled her over. Well, the cops came. They didn't arrest her because they didn't pull her over. So when they got there, she actually wasn't in the vehicle. And so they actually take her home. So I take her to her house, and then when I get there, I just see like this terrible scenario, And at that point, that was when I realized that there's an issue here. Like, we didn't even know there was an issue, you know what I mean? I mean, besides being depressed, And so then only a few weeks later, my parents hadn't heard from her in like a week. They went over to the house, and, kids are walking around, dirty diapers, and, it's just terrible. So I told her, I said, hey, you need to get help. I mean, you can't do this. And it's not their fault. They didn't deserve this. So she agreed to turn over custody of the kids to me. And so I picked them up on Valentine's Day on 2004. And Valentine's Day 2005, I should say. Valentine's Day 2005. I pick them up, and they came to live with me, and they lived with me until July of 2011.
What was that like? I mean, you go from...
Man, I'm telling you, bro, you're a dad. It's being a parent is a lot of responsibility, and so I was trying to juggle a career that, I mean, I was just kind of getting complacent in, and juggle being a dad. And, the way that I kind of explain it is that I was in, and at that time I was on my own again. So my girlfriend wised up, moved out, so I'm just kind of on my own, and the way I kind of explain it is like, you go from not caring about anything to caring about everything, like you're constantly worried about something going wrong, because no longer are you responsible just for yourself, man. You're responsible for like this little kid, you know.
Every parent is shaking their head.
You
Yes.
know, it's like, golly, you know, and you know, I'm doing laundry every night because you got 3 kids, and you know, I'm just, you know, and you're folding little tiny shorts. There's, you know, you're trying to find odd socks are this big, you know, you're trying to
Right.
find that, and so, you know, I had that going on, and I mean, it really changed me in so many ways. Like, you know, so you had that, and you had Sarah coming in to remind me, like, dude, what are you doing, man? Like, you know, we were good for a reason back then, you know what I mean? And so, you know, things kind of went downhill there for a little while because I'm trying to juggle being a single dad, 3 kids aren't even mine, you know, but and a career, and you know, making all these mistakes recruiting wise and everything else. And so 2008, I was like, man, I'm better than this, man. Like, I am better than this. And I'm like, I need to figure out what's going on. What is wrong? You know, so like I said, I got that fire I say, okay, I'm going to throw ego out. All right. If I were to start my entire training system over again, where would I start? And I literally started from scratch and revamped the entire way that I did the training. You know, I still had this umbrella over it where I want everybody to be good. I'm not going to follow one particular way, including my own way, you know, because I have my own way, you know. So what are the great things that came out of my old way of doing it? And let's start over. And I read this article in Techniques magazine. Okay. I can't remember who wrote it, and props to the guy that did, because this changed me. It was an article where someone had done a study of cross country and distance programs around the country. And when they did the article, it was about summer mileage compared to mileage during the season and number of rest days. And this study came out and showed that the teams that went to the NCAAs ran less miles on the average and had more rest days on the average than programs that didn't make the NCAAs. And I found that so intriguing and probably the opposite of what I had always thought.
Right.
You know? Not that I was a big mileage guy, because I'm not, but so then I started thinking about the whole rest thing, you know, and I had always previously, and even more so from this point on in my career as a coach, I look at rest as equally as important as any other workout. You know, it is like its own workout. It's in the opposite, you know.
Right.
And so I revamped, you know, I wanted to have 1 day off during 1 day off every 3 weeks, and then, you know, 2 days off in a row every X number of weeks. And here's how I want the everything to be structured. And so I redo this whole thing. And then equally as important on the recruiting side, go back and I said, what's the ideal kid for this program? What's the ideal kid? Forget about trying to figure out that I got to recruit, you know, the top kids in Ohio or whatever it is. I mean, what are the things that I think make a great distance runner? And so some of those things, you know, like one big thing is, just like with me in my personal life and my professional life, I want people that are fearless. I want people that aren't afraid. So a big deal with me was that I wanted to find kids. I didn't care what your times were. I wanted to find kids that were not afraid to lead races, even if it didn't work out for them, even if they die miserably and finish 12th every single time. I wanted kids that were like me, kids that had a cuckoo switch where they weren't afraid, you know, and I didn't care where they came from. And I wanted kids that were blue collar, middle class kids for the most part, because I felt as though that had good, solid parents that understood the value of a dollar, the value of hard work, because that's who I am as a person. I understand the value of a dollar. I understand the value of hard work. I want somebody that's not afraid to fail. So I want people that are fearless. Obviously, I want people that look like runners. And I'm not in coaching. People can say what they want, but I can't have a bunch of shot putters out there running distance. You know what I mean? And now I'm not saying you can't have muscular girls out there, because I've had some really, solid, there's not one particular body type, but you need to be built like a distance runner,
So when you were at Columbia, you talked about the rule of halves as far as the type of kids that you could recruit. Were you kind of doing the same thing of like, okay,
kind of the same thing. I'm going to start with a large group,
yeah, mm-hmm.
and I'm going to work my way down. And so I went everywhere. And the other thing was, I wanted to get back to doing home visits, because that's what made me a great recruiter. And I wanted to get back to seeing kids run. And so, so I took that time and, started pulling in kids from Idaho, kids from Washington. I'm going wherever somebody is. I want to see them run, and I want to see this cuckoo switch. I want to see this determination. And because I can work with that. You know what I mean? I can work with a kid that wants to work hard and that's not afraid to fail. And so through revamping the training, getting back to who I am as a coach, what made me good as a coach, and then transferring that over into the recruiting as well. Now all of a sudden, like I said, we had a couple of years, 4th, 5th. Then 2009, we're MAC runner-up, right? And then we're like the first team not to make it to nationals. We were the runner-up behind Miami University that year, but we beat Miami at the region. Rita Gary was the coach then, who's now at Furman, her and Robert Gary. And so, or I think that she was the coach. I'm pretty sure she was the coach. Yeah, she was the coach. So anyway, we finished second at the MAC, and then 2010, that's when it really turned around. So we won the MAC again for the first time since like 2002. Win the MAC, go to the region, and we end up qualifying for the NCAA's at large. I think we finished 5th in the region. We end up qualifying at large for the first time. And then the next year we win again, go to the region, and we hosted the region that next year.
Oh, really?
At Toledo, yeah. And matter of fact, I was instrumental in getting an NCAA rule changed so that we could, because by then, so in 2006, I became a region rep and on the executive committee. And I actually was on it for 6 straight years, the way it kind of just worked out, and until I resigned. And so we ended up, in 2011, we hosted the region and we finished 3rd behind Michigan and Michigan State. I want to say we only scored like 60-something points. And then 2012, we win the MAC again and set the all-time record for the lowest score. We only scored 24 points at the MAC meeting. Wow. And we had 8 women named to the all-MAC team. We had 8 of the top 14 finishers. Wow. And you can run 9. The 9th runner was actually arguably our best runner. It's a girl that would end up running 16 flat for 5,000 meters, but she was anemic, and she finished like 40th or something like this. So, we really turned the tide again and got back to just being consistently good, winning the MAC, being nationally ranked, making it to nationals, which, in cross country is incredibly hard to do.
Very.
It's incredibly hard. And so that was a lot of big turning points there, you know what I mean? Up until, ultimately my own demise.
When did one of the things I wanted to talk about was this, I don't know if it was a podcast, if you would call it, but when did you start doing coffee talk?
So Coffee Talk, yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier. I invented the track and field podcast, man. So, and no joke. So I ended up is another one of those things where like I just had an idea and I decided I wanted to do it and I just did it. So I had actually convinced the school's FM radio station to allow me to host a weekly radio show. And so it was on Sunday nights, if I remember correctly, and it started at, I think, 7 o'clock at night and went for 2 hours. And you could actually, there was a camera in the studio and you could actually log in and you could see me in the studio talking to the camera or whatever and playing music. And it was a music-based show that had a track and field theme to it. And I would have coaches, just like you do with this, call in, and I would have several guests on for each episode, and I would ask them, hey, what kind of music you like? I'll play that music for you. So since it was on FM radio, I was live, in Toledo. And people would call in, that had nothing to do with track and field and ask if I'd play a song, because they loved listening. They didn't know what the heck I was talking about, because it was track, but they loved the show because it was fun and funny and, I'd crack jokes. And I'm not afraid to make fun of myself. That's a big part of my humor, so. What
was the most surprising, like, coach that you had on and you decide if you're going to say his or her name and like they picked a song that you were like, really? That's the song you want to hear? That's your favorite song or your genre?
You know what? It was, I can't remember. I'll tell you who it was and he'll appreciate that I remember this. The person that, and I can't remember the song. I wish I could, but it was Steve Rainbow at Wichita State. Mm-hmm. It was some kooky song, man, that he had chosen, and I don't remember what it was, but it was, so I had that show for a couple years, until I resigned. Mm-hmm. I think I started it in 2010, so I had it for a couple years, and people, like were asking to be on the show, it was like, hey man, when are you going to have me on Coffee Talk, bro? Yep. And most coaches listened in, you either listened in live, because you could log in and to the radio station and you could listen live. You could see me if you click the camera button. And, but I had downloaded every episode and uploaded it into a podcast site. Yeah. And it would get hundreds and sometimes thousands of people listening into it. And so I had people from that's before podcasting. Yeah. And really I would talk about anything. I'm an open book just in life, but I would talk about aliens and, lunar landing and, I'm always good for a conspiracy theory or some dumbass story about myself, Now,
I'm a big fan of the Joe Rogan Experience, but we're going to stay away from aliens and
I'm telling you, dude, I'll talk about anything, bro. And interestingly enough, fast forwarding on past my coaching career, I actually had a nationally syndicated radio show that was also called Coffee Talk. It was called Coffee Talk 3.0. And because I had, over time, I had multiple. So anyway, when I was at Toledo and I had that radio show, it was the most popular radio show on that station. And so they asked me if I'd do another show. They said, you ever thought of doing another one? Like that was just music based, because I'm kind of a music nerd, And I was like, yeah, I mean, it would be kind of cool, So at the end there, for about 6 months or so, I had another show called Coffee Talk 2, TOO. And Coffee Talk 2 was on Wednesdays. And I would pick a theme. And so like for example, it would be like the women of rock and roll. And so we would have, for like 4 straight weeks, I'd play nothing but music from women, women bands, women solo artists, everything from Aretha Franklin to the Go-Go's and, you know, Joan Jett and whoever, you know, and tell little anecdotal stories about the music, you know. And
if you had to
so
pick
that was it
one
was interesting.
genre, if you had to be in one genre to be a DJ, what would you have picked?
70s, easy.
Is that right? Easy.
Easy, yeah.
Who's your favorite band solo artist from the 70s?
Oh man, that's a tough call for.
You thought of somebody
you know
right off the
what?
bat. Who was it?
Well, if I were to say right off the bat, I'd say Barry Manilow.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even kidding. Barry Manilow at one time had 5 albums on the Billboard Top 100 chart. 5 albums at the same time. Wow. 5 albums, bro. Not even 5 songs. Albums.
You know how many people are listening right now? They're going, Barry who? Manilow? They don't know who Barry Manilow is.
Tell you something, man.
I don't know Barry Manilow. Get out of here.
And the Carpenters, man, you can't go. Let me tell you something, man. I love 70s music. You go back and listen to. I went on a trip in 2001 when it was turning 2001 to 2002. That was after we won the MAC for the first time in 2001. I treated myself. I got a bonus, okay, and I treated myself to a ski trip at the Arctic Circle. So I flew.
Oh, the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, so I went to this town in Finland, northern Finland, called Ruka, Ruka, and there's a ski resort there. So I picked this out on a map, and I went and treated myself to a trip to Ruka, Finland, right? And back then I had a Sony Walkman, you know, because disc player, you know.
Oh yeah.
And so the warmest it got was -17 there. And the coldest guy was -55. So it's a different kind of skiing, but so I had all my Gore-Tex and everything on, but I would have my headphones underneath my mask and everything. And I'd have the disc player kind of inside so it wouldn't get so cold that it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And almost that entire trip, bro, I was playing the Carpenters' greatest hits. And I remember distinctly this one point, I'm on the ski lift, right? And as far up and behind me as I look, I couldn't see anybody. I was by myself on this one lift for this trail on the back. I'm a pretty good skier, so I'll ski the more dangerous ones. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, I'm on the lift and I'm just chilling. It's perfectly quiet, right? The sun only comes up in the southern part of the sky, it just kind of loops, right? It doesn't even come up and cross the sky, just a little loop. You're so far up on a planet. And it's as white as white, bro. It's so white. Everything's just white, crystal white. You got the sun off in the distance. It's completely quiet. I'm the only person on the lift. And on my Walkman at that time, I'm listening to Karen Carpenter singing, I'm on top of the world, right? I'm on top of the world.
Yeah.
Down on creation. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm literally on top of the world, bro. And yeah, man, easy answer, bro. I'll go back to the 70s any day of music, man.
I gotta give a shout out. Our director of customer service, order fulfillment, was a big time shot putter here just down the road here in Illinois. She goes to Indiana University, several time All-American shot putter, weight throw, discus. She's just a stud, Jennifer, right? And I remember asking her one day, I was like, so what was your pump up music in high school? Like, what did you know? And she's like, you're going to laugh. She's like, it was the Carpenters. She goes,
yeah, bro.
Love it.
Yeah, man.
Have their headphones on. And back then everybody was listening to rap and maybe heavy metal or whatever. She goes, and I'd have Top of the World, the Carpenters, just to play it.
I mean it, man. I'm telling you, bro. I can listen to that all day, any day, brother.
Oh, man. So we've been talking about, well, before we get to that subject, one of the most important questions I wanted to ask is, do you remember what you and I bet on that you lost $20 to me that you said you were going to pay me in pennies, and I don't think you've ever paid me?
No, I know I never paid you.
Okay.
And I remember having the conversation where I said that it was something about it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe you remember better than I do, but I think that we were betting about somebody winning the triple jump at the MAC championships.
That sounds right. Yeah.
I think it had to do with April Williams. So we had April Williams back then, and you guys had a
Patricia
girl.
Soman.
Yes.
Yes.
Tricia Soman.
Yeah.
That girl was a stud, bro.
Awesome.
That girl. A matter of fact, you got a lot of studs on that team. But April Williams, I mean, she was All-American indoors in the long jump and outdoors in the triple jump. She triple jumped 44 feet something, you know what I mean? And long jumped like almost 22 feet. It was 21 something. And I think it was, I said, there's no way that that April Williams is going to lose the triple jump or whatever it was. And I said, if I lose, I'm going to pay you $20. I'm going to pay you in pennies. I never paid you because it would have been NCAA. I can pay you now because nobody cares.
You know who won that $20 for me? So, I was at Ball State for 2 years. I had Patricia junior and senior year.
Yeah.
And she jumped well her junior year. And, good friend of both of ours, Kelly Lycan, did an awesome job with her freshman and sophomore year. In between her junior year and senior year, I went to level 2 at Boise and did jumps with Boo Schexnayder.
Oh,
and so, she had a huge improvement her senior year. It was all Boo. It was just
I'm telling you
what he told me to do. And I was like, I won me $20. That's pretty good. Yeah.
There's a lot to learn, bro.
I did this entire podcast episode with you just to remind you that you owed me $20. That's the only reason.
Nice.
I was on the show.
Tell me where to send the pennies, brother.
I always expected.
I ain't lying because I would pay it in pennies.
I remember. I fully expected to get a sock full of pennies or a box. That was it was in my head. Like if I'm ever getting paid, it's going to be in pennies. There's a coin shortage right now, so
Yeah.
In pennies now. So you earlier you said you're an open book. You talk about anything, things like that, and you've alluded to it a couple of times. And certainly some people are listening right now. They know where we're going to. And you talk about resigning as the head coach of the University of Toledo track and field and cross country coach. So staying at 30,000 feet. Obviously, you can go find. I don't want to call it the dirt. You can find truth and not truth online about the situation. But talk us through what happened and leading to the resignation.
Yeah, that was tough, bro. I mean, it's so in January of 2012, I get a call that I got to go to human resources, and I knew that this was coming because there had been about like a 2-month lead up to this point. But the Reader's Digest version was that I had been accused of sexual harassment because I had kicked someone off the team, and they went and accused me of sexual harassment right after. So then, of course, there's a big investigation, and I had to go through it. And so it's all coming to a head. I know I'm waiting for this call to come. I get the call from the athletic director, and I had just come back from practice, and I was behind the basketball arena in the van, and my phone lights up and it says Michael Bryan. Well, it says OB. So Michael Bryan, who's still the athletic director at Toledo, he was my friend. I mean, I had a great relationship with him. I had a great relationship with everybody at Toledo, and because I was very, again, amiable. I'm just that guy. You know what I mean? And so he says, hey, you need to go over to human resources and meet with a guy named Kevin West. I said, all right. And he said, you all right? And I'm like, yeah, man. I mean, even if I wasn't, I got to be. And he said, well, just promise me one thing. And I said, what's that? And he said, that you're going to be honest. And I said, I swear to you. I swear on my life, man. I said, I won't do anything to try to save myself. I'm just going to be honest about no matter what. And so I went over, and let me tell you something, man. That even if you know that you haven't done anything, even if you know deep down that it's kind of like passing a cop on the interstate, right? Even if you know you got the cruise control set at 65, bro. You see the cop, what do? You hit the brakes because cops make you nervous, man. Make everybody. So you hear you're going to human resources. It doesn't matter what you think, bro. You are nervous, man. So I go over and I meet with the head of the investigation, which is the lawyer for the university. And, long story short, we go through the whole thing. I'm cleared of the sexual harassment. Okay. Because, without going into detail, it was obvious that
you're cleared of that.
I'm cleared of it. Right. But in the course of defending myself for that, like I said, I'm going to be honest about everything. I'm not going to lie about anything. So they were asking me, there were other things that were thrown into it. So it was like, have you ever drank at practice? And I was, okay, yeah. I mean, and so I would explain, the scenario where like, I would come back for night practice and I would have a highball or whatever it is, what I mean? Yeah, it sounds seedy. No, I shouldn't have done it, obviously, you know what I mean? But living in my world, where I don't fear consequence in my head, particularly at that time, I don't think there's any big deal about it. You know what I mean? They say you cuss a lot. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I do, et cetera, et cetera. So you're going through all these things, but then the big question was, have you ever dated any of your runners? Yeah. Yeah, man, I have. So I go through and I explain when it happened and, and I'm honest about the entire coach-athlete relationship thing. So at the end of the meeting, he says, even though he's like, here's my problem. You're actually the first person that I've had to deal with in all my years of doing this that I actually feel bad for, because I don't know how I can go back to the president of the university and tell him that I think it's a good idea for you to continue to be the track coach here, when in actuality, I think that you could be, but I have all these things, So even though you were cleared of the sexual harassment, you're in that position. I mean, there's a scenario involved in this. Whether it doesn't matter. There's a scenario involved, and you're not completely innocent as a person. You may be cleared of sexual harassment. It doesn't mean that you're not also engaging in conversations you should not be having. And then you got the drinking thing, right? Then you got the language thing, and then now you're also admitting that you have dated your former runners, even though it was a long time before that. You know what I mean? Over 10 years. So I said, I get it, man. I get it, and I said, well, what if I fight it? And because, I mean, if I get a good lawyer, and I fight, we can, hey, it was a long time ago and it wasn't even against the rules back then. Some colleges, even to this day, don't have a rule against, professors dating their students because they're adults or whatever, I was like, well, what happens to this whole thing? You know what I mean? Well, the problem is that there was like this thing of text. That's what led to the whole sexual harassment claim, you know what I mean? Was that person turned over all these texts. Well, the texts had been, it wasn't the whole text. It wasn't the whole conversations, So out of context, which is what people read on the internet, these are conversations out of context. But then when you put it into context and you see the texts that aren't there, you can see that this is a conversation that's much bigger, that, you know what I mean? But you shouldn't be having the conversation. So well, what, and in those conversations, I'm talking about a lot of different people because I'm talking to this person as if this was my friend. I shouldn't be talking to this person like they're my friend. You know what I mean? So I'm like, well, what happens to all these things? They said, well, this is all going to be part of the investigation. This will be, an open record. And here I am, I'm staring down all these texts and I'm saying things about people that I wouldn't say to their face. You know what I mean? Because, so you vent to your friends, you vent to your wife, it doesn't mean you mean those things, but you're venting. And what am I doing? Venting to this kid, I mean, acting like we're friends, like an idiot, And so my fear was that if I do fight it, that probably still going to lose anyway, let's be honest, And then the other thing is all these things, I don't want these people that I've said something in the heat of a conversation that I don't mean, or that could be damaging to that person, more importantly, you know what I mean? So it's like, I could end up really damaging someone's life if these get out. I could damage somebody's marriage, somebody's, because these are the context of these giant conversations. And I'm like, well, what if I just resign? I mean, what if I resign right now? Then what happens? He said, well, then it just ends. And I said, that's what I'm going to do, man. And, I mean, I'm no martyr. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't want to give that perception because I'm not a martyr. I'm not, I fell on my sword so that these people didn't get hurt. I needed to resign anyway. And the reality was I had been carrying, it's weird because like in my coaching career, I followed the rules. Like I didn't break NCAA rules. I mean, the biggest violation I ever had was, I think calling a kid by mistake twice in 1 week, where I called on a Sunday and then I called on a Saturday or something, you know what I mean? And I never went over budget, and kids always graduated. I was successful, obviously. I was involved in the community. I was doing all of these things. But I think in my head, even subconsciously, I was carrying around this dark cloud with me because of the relationship thing. And it was always there, even though it was years before, man, it was just always there. And I was just tired of carrying that around with me also. You know what I mean? Like it's like, you know what? Maybe it's just better if it just all ends, and listen, I ain't lying. I asked him if there's any way I could resign at the end of the year. It was like, no, man,
It's now or never.
That ain't how it works, bro. And I was just, so at that moment, I had to resign myself to the fact that like it was going to end, and it's not going to be pretty, and when I look back on it, as I said before, I'm not afraid of anything. I take great risks. I don't fear consequence. And so my whole life, my whole professional career, I'm living a life of like this. I'm like Peter Pan, bro. I mean, I'm living this college single bachelor life where I didn't want to grow up. And the kids that I coached were like the only friends that I would keep. You know what I'm saying? Like you're just immersed in coaching. There's no balance to my life. I was just immersed in coaching. And so if that's all you're around and that's all you do and you have no other outlet, you know what I mean? And what was attractive to people for me as their coach is the fact that I am an open book. A kid could text me and I'll text him back. It'd be 11 o'clock at night. I'll text you back. You know what I mean? Kids could ask me anything. They could, and, in some ways it's great that I was that guy, because I mean, I've had calls in the middle of the night where somebody felt as though that they were going to hurt themselves. I can't say, well, maybe I should have done things different because maybe that person wouldn't have called me that night. Do you know what I'm saying? Or being an open book about their eating disorder and being there for them, so there were good things about being an open book, but the reality was I was running my program like a club. You know what I mean? Like it was like there was, coach and athlete, and I allowed this to come closer, which then you open yourself to vulnerability for these relationships to happen, or for you to just even engage in conversations that you shouldn't be having with people that you are coaching. You know what I mean? Because you're not there to be their friend, you know? And in my head, I thought that was why I was successful,
Mm.
was because I was
Interesting.
like that. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? And maybe I won't be as successful if there's more of a gap or something
Mm.
like this. You know what I mean? And it's easy to fall into that. You know, that's I mean, and the other thing is what I wasn't conscious about that I am very conscious about now is I wasn't running my career like a business. And what I mean by that is that, like, you are your own brand. You are, I mean, I know this now as an actor, you are your own business. And you need to be very conscious about the brand that you are. What do people say about you when you're not around? What is the perception that you give to other people? And a lot of coaches, they don't get that. And I can see it, you know what I mean? It's because I'm still involved, you know what I mean? I can see where people, and it's what I was missing is this is a very small little fish tank coaching track and field particularly. It's tiny, man. You know what I mean? And the problem that I had created, and I can see where other coaches create this problem also, is people at the end of the day, they don't care about the truth. Nobody cares about the truth. You know what they care about? They care about the perception. Okay. They care about whether it's believable. People don't even seek out the truth anymore, particularly in today's society. They read a headline, they see a picture, and they read a caption. They don't take the time. That's why headlines are purposely made to be misleading. That's why photos can be manipulated to portray a certain idea that may not even be the truth. You know what I mean? And when it comes down to it, what matters is it believable? So like with me, you know, I resigned, right? Which was hard enough as it was. Well, then, you know, it was big news in Toledo. I mean, it was front page of the Toledo Blade, not even the sports section. I mean, it was front page of the Blade
Yeah,
for
you
2 days.
you were a journalism major.
Hey, man, you know, at least I was important enough, right, to get on the front page. But it's it was big news. I mean, other coaches have resigned from Toledo, and it's buried on page 6 of the sports section, you know, for the same reason. But the problem was I had created a perception of myself. So, like, you know, there's nothing I can do about it now except for learn from it and move forward. But you know, when I look back on it, you know, it's, of course it's believable. I mean, I'm that guy. I'm the guy you see at the bar drinking. You know what I mean? I'm the guy that's always kind of center of attention when we're around other coaches. I'm the guy. So like even the athletic director, when he said that the phone call came in, right? They didn't tell him which coach it was. And the athletic director, who was my friend, you know, Mike said, you know what, Kevin, I'm going to be honest with you. When they called me up and they said that there was an issue with a coach and a relationship, you're the first one I thought of.
Mm.
And I said, I get that. And he said, I'm just telling you as your friend, not just your boss, but it's because of the way that you carry yourself.
Mm.
You know, it's believable, you know, and I never thought about that ahead of time. You know what I mean? And so like now, like in my professional career, both as an actor and as a businessman, because I own 2 companies and I'm a partner in a third. I'm very conscious about how I portray myself, because you don't want something to come up that's believable, you know, when it's not true. You know what I mean?
So earlier I'd asked you in relationship to, we used the example of dirt biking and BMX, you know,
Yeah.
would you do anything over? Would you do anything differently? Do you regret anything? In this situation, what would you do differently?
Well, I mean, obviously looking back, I had the opportunity, of course, to be the adult in these scenarios. Even at the point at which obviously I had realized that my relationship with someone can go further. I'm supposed to be the adult here. I'm supposed to be the voice of reason. I'm supposed to be the one that says, you know what, that's just a terrible idea, and I have that ability. I also have the ability to be conscious of the perception that I give of people. Here I am, I do all these things that are good and do all these things the right way and be a good person and raise someone else's kids. And, there's all these good things, but all of those things wiped out all at once because of this one negative thing. You know what I mean? And you need to be conscious of that because, I mean, now time has passed and, like with anything, people realize, obviously I've gone on to be really successful in something else and be a good person and start my own charity and all this kind of stuff, and because it's important to me for people to realize that it's okay to screw up. I mean, we all screw up, you know what I mean? But what do you learn from it? How do you move forward?
That's perfect. So tell us, what have you learned from these mistakes, these screw ups?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing that I've learned, obviously, is that that I have to be conscious of I have to be conscious of the potential consequences. Like I said, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to take chances. But when it comes down to it, particularly with interpersonal relationships with people, I have to be the voice of my own reason. You know what I mean? I say all the time that what separates us from the other animals, besides the fact that we walk upright and we got, opposable thumbs, is we have the ability to reason. Other animals don't have that ability. A dog can't walk past water without drinking it. Can't walk past another dog's butt without sniffing it, right? But we, as adults, we have the ability to reason. We have the ability to think, pause, hit the pause button, right? How is this going to affect not only me, my own personal gratification, how is this negatively going to impact somebody else? Because I wasn't concerned about my own consequences, right? Mm-hmm. At the same time, what I'm saying is I don't care about what potential negative impact this can have on someone else. So like as a coach dating an athlete, yeah, we get it. You're both adults, right? But in the general scheme of things, it's different than that when you're a coach athlete, okay? Right. And I justify in my head because it's easy to justify negative behavior. It's easy. We all justify deviant behavior for ourselves. We figure, well, everything will work out in the end, or, I wasn't thinking about, and I look back now because I feel terrible about it. I mean, I genuinely feel horrible because why would I put somebody in that position where they got to lie to their friends, they got to lie to their parents, got to sneak around? I mean, what the hell are you thinking, man? You know what I mean? Like this, and what kind of a negative impact it's going to have on this person as they walk forward through life? You know what I mean? And like, so, and, I mean, listen, we both know coaches that are married to their former athletes. We both know coaches that, have done this before, but do you really feel bad? Do you feel sorry? Are you sorry that you did it? I don't think that everybody is. I actually genuinely am sorry that it happened because I know that my actions created a negative imbalance in somebody else's life. And I think a bigger part of that picture is my own life was out of balance. So as coaches, we live a unique career path where particularly as a cross country and track coach, you're immersed in your job. You're immersed in your career. You are your career. It is you. Okay. Because name one other profession where you're actually called the name of your profession. So like doctors are called doc every once in a while, but you are your profession. People call you coach.
Right.
You are. That is who you are, right? So I spend all of this time only focusing on Coach Hadsell, when the reality is I should be spending my time on Kevin Hadsell as a person, as a man, as a grown-up, as an adult. You know what I mean? I was actually, so my company is, I own a live event production company. And so we do live concerts, we do live sporting events. And we are now partnering up with American Track League. So we do these pole vault events now, and we're going to be moving forward with some other things in the next couple of years. Well, I was at the pole vault event at Sandy Morris's place, you know, and that was on ESPN. And while I was there, the ESPN crew just so happened to be filming a documentary about Coastal Carolina's 2016 baseball World Championship.
That's right. Yeah.
And I was there for Gary's first year. So we ended up getting this conversation. Anyway, everything snowballs. All of a sudden, I'm being interviewed for the documentary. And a big focus of the documentary was about Gary as a coach. And Gary and I, Gary Gilmore's the head coach at Coastal, we're very similar personalities in the way that we coach. And a big part of the conversation I was having is I could put myself in Gary's shoes, where he made a change. And I think it's a change that coaches, all coaches should go through. Dabo went through this. The Virginia coach went through it. Gary went through it. If you take the focus off of winning, because really that you're just focusing on yourself, right? Because, hey, if I win, yay me, you know. But if you take the focus off of the winning and you shift the focus just to the student athletes, to the people that you're leading, it doesn't even have to be a coach. It could be a business person or whatever. Put the focus on genuinely caring about these people and their development and making decisions that are best going to impact them and their lives, that the winning will take care of itself. Okay. And internally as a person, focusing on what's going to make me a better Kevin Hadsell, not what's going to make me a better Coach Hadsell. Okay. Now, if I'd have gone my career and I'd have made those decisions, I never would have dated one of my athletes.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. Yeah, is it fair to say you did not have that understanding of life and yourself versus your roles?
No, I didn't. You know, I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, people may say it's a cop out, whatever. You don't live my life. So the reality is, when you're in it like that, you, like I say, you just justify subconsciously. You don't think there's really anything wrong with it, even though you know that you shouldn't be doing it. At the same time, you justify doing it. And I wasn't cognizant of the fact that I am negatively impacting these people. And now I see that, you know what I mean? So like, you know, if there are lessons to be learned there, you know, you have to make sure that you're completely focused on making people better people, making yourself a better person, and making decisions that aren't going to negatively impact somebody in any way at all, you know?
We had talked about when you made that a declaration to the SWA of, you know, if you hire me in 5 years, we'll be ranked. And, you know, I said there's a fine line between confidence and cockiness. I believe what you are describing here is a fine line between selflessness and selfishness. You know, when we talk about the roles that we play, and you're right, you know, coach is one of those, no one calls their accountant at 8 o'clock at night. No one their chef at 9 o'clock at night to say, hey, I'm having a problem with my home cooking onions. Can you help me? But in track and field and coaching, it's a no. I hate to say it's a no-brainer. It's what we allow as coaches. That we allow kids to have that dependency on us as coaches. And even the most selfless coach pouring into their team, well, they're being selfish in the sense that they're not taking care of their family life, their
That's
spouse,
right.
their father,
That's right.
etc.
I mean, it literally, that's a perfect way to explain it. I mean, it's really, when everything happened, I mean, I lost everything, bro. I mean, I don't want anybody, no one should feel sorry for me, because I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. But the real reality was I lost everything. I mean, I lost my home. I lost my car. I mean, I literally was homeless. I had no career. I had no job. I had nothing, you know? And in that time, when you're just literally rock bottom, I went through this really deep kind of understanding of myself, where like I had to think, I had to be honest with myself and say, were you really that nice of a guy? Or were you only nice because you needed to be nice in order to get people to do things for you? You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
what kind of a person are you? Are you really that great of a guy, or is this selfish
Mhm.
kind of underlying foundation to how you're acting,
Yeah, the ends
because
justify
you
the
want
means.
something back for it?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I look back and I can see where I was that guy. I've always been a nice guy, but at the end of the day, I was going to make a decision that was going to be best for me. Period.
I appreciate the way you said something. We're certainly not here to, in your words, martyr you. But in the
Yeah,
same
no,
token, we're not here to bash. And well, certainly you've had your fair share of that. But I do want to say I do appreciate. I think the way you just said something there tells us a little bit about your internal thinking. You said I lost everything, because at first when you said that, I was like, well, yeah, well, you deserved what you lost.
mm,
But I do appreciate hearing that you use the phrasing I lost everything, versus I've heard other people who have been caught and had to resign,
mm.
things like that, where they say everything was taken from me.
Yeah, right.
It's
Yeah.
like, wait, no, that was taken. You gave it,
Right.
So I do appreciate that. There is that maturation, and definitely your thought process of who you are as a person versus your
Yeah.
roles. Is it all about you, or am I leaving a good imprint towards the other person and people in my life?
Yeah.
That's so. In that same vein, again, not to martyr you, if you will, what was the coaching's a very tight network. What was the reception from coaches? You got close coaches that are close to you, that are friends outside of coaching, and vice versa, conventions, etc. What was the reception, and what is the reception today from fellow coaches?
Well, at first, of course, I reached out to the coaches that I looked up to the most and I respected the most. And I was embarrassed, man. I mean, what else can you be? It's impossible not to be embarrassed. And because I'm human. And, other coaches, they literally, would even cry when I was telling, they couldn't believe. But, at the same time, like, I just, most coaches, hey, they understand people make mistakes. I mean, we're all human here. It doesn't wipe out everything that you've done that's good. But I'm sure deep down they understand that, like, if a guy deserves it, then he deserves it. You know what I mean? Um, Very few coaches, at least not to my face, um, were like, F you, you know what I mean? I mean, there's coach, you go on Let's Run, and there's always going to be some, douchebag on there that's going to say something. But at the end of the day, hey, man, I'm no different than, show me a guy that's not cheated on his wife, right? Show me somebody that's not, well, you, yes, of course. But like, a lot of people do a lot of things. Doesn't
Yeah,
mean
we
that they're
definitely
bad
make
people.
mistake. No,
Good
you're
people
right.
make bad choices.
It's a difficult, what we want to believe, using my comic book fandom from when I was a kid, we want to believe bad people are Venom. There's no redeeming quality of Venom,
Right.
right? He's a bad person.
Yes.
Unfortunately, people, not just bad people, good people, are more like Thanos. He was doing something terrible, wiping out half the population.
Yeah.
He thought, like, I hate to say his heart, because they're talking about Thanos here, but
Yeah.
he thought he was doing humanity,
Right.
a big sacrifice. That's more of what
Right.
human
He thought that he
really
was
is.
balancing the universe
Yeah,
by
he thought he was doing
eliminating half
something
of life. Right.
good. And that's more of what people are. There are good people who do bad things, and that's hard to contemplate. Like, wait a minute, I thought this
Right.
person was here and they did this. And then there's bad people that do good things, and you're like, well, wait a minute, I thought the person was a terrible person. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Gave money to charity or whatever good thing.
Right.
It's a difficult conversation for sure.
Yeah. It's and really when it came down to it, it was more of a matter of just being honest with myself. And so I made the decision right away that no matter what, I'm not going to allow this to define me, no matter what. I said, and that's tough because, you lose everything. I mean, literally you're homeless. I mean, I literally was homeless.
Yeah, I read online that you lived in your car for like 18 months as you were transitioning
18
into
months,
this new
bro.
career.
18,
Like
two winters.
literally in a car.
Literally. Yeah, literally. I'm not even, this is not like figuratively. I literally. I had a Chevy HHR, which is kind of like a boxier version of the PT Cruiser. And I put the back two seats down, and I had a single bed, and I had all my stuff and comforters and pillows, and I set off for New York, and I lived out of my car.
What made you go into this acting role versus? I mean, there's 1,500 college programs, roughly 1,200. Why didn't you try to get into coaching somewhere else?
Well, I had a couple of coaches reach out, but I needed to get away from it. I needed to process the whole thing. And really, there was a little bit of maybe some self-loathing there where I felt as though, I need to live out this punishment type of deal because I had such a great thing and I messed it up, and you're really pissed at yourself, for doing it. You know what I mean? So but what happened was, it's interesting. I was out in California at my buddy Kramer's house. He's my best friend, and his name's Rob. Like I said, we call him Kramer. And Kramer's got a cool house out in Davis. He's the PR director for UC Davis for the medical hospital, veterinary medical hospital. He built an Irish pub in his house. And so he's got an authentic Irish pub in his house. So went to Kramer's, and we're chilling out. And I was there for like a week just to get away from everything was happening and stuff. And so the last night I was there, we're sitting there, we're drinking some highballs, and he's like, dude, what are you going to do, man? Like, this is all you've ever done. I mean, so I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I said, you're going to think that I'm crazy, bro, but I'm going to become an actor. I was like, I don't mean like there's some background like extra guy. I'm gonna be a real actor. People see me on TV, and they're gonna I was just like that. I'm gonna be that guy. I'm gonna be an actor. And he's like, you know what? I don't think it's crazy at all. He's like, you're just that guy. You're just kind of like that personality. He's like, I can totally see he's an actor. So literally in that moment, that was my decision. I'm going to be an actor. I had never been in anything. I had no connection to acting. I had no anything. I had no idea even how I was going to do it. But just like I made the decision that one day when I saw my coach and said, you know what, I'm going to be a college coach. I had no idea how I was going to make it happen. I just knew I was going to do it. And I did.
So what's the first thing someone wants to become an actor? What's the first step?
Oh, man.
There's no coach to call and ask advice. You don't
call me. I'll give you good advice. Yeah. Well, you know what? It's one of these things where like I had reached out to, I had a mutual friend of this woman in Toledo. She owned a talent agency. It was a talent agency that discovered Katie Holmes, because Katie Holmes was from Toledo.
Oh.
And so I reached out to her and I said, maybe I'm crazy, but, I really want to be an actor. She's like, well, why don't you stop by? Well, and I'll meet with you. So I stopped by and I meet her, and she's like, you got a really interesting look, like you're memorable. When people see you, she's like, they probably remember you later on, even if they didn't interact. I said, yeah, it's kind of just for whatever reason, I just got a unique look about me. I don't look like anybody else, you know. And she's like, well, practice this commercial. She gave me a script. She's like, come back and I want you to act it out for me. And it was a McDonald's commercial. And so I came back, you know, and I acted it out for her. And she's like, that's really believable, you know? And I was like, that's cool. She's like, you know what? I may have a role for you. So she ended up getting me cast in this national TV commercial for Hollywood casinos that would air in cities that have Hollywood casinos.
Yeah.
You know? And I remember showing up and it was like, well, how much does it pay? And she's like, well, the rate's $1,500. I was like, man, that's pretty cool. You know, 3 days. It's like, no, jobs like this pay $1,500 a day. And I was like,
wait a minute.
I was like,
first of all, hold on.
You pay me how much?
What was the name of that lady, that talent agency?
I'm telling you, bro. I was just like, I was stunned, you know.
Yeah.
Well, little did I know, it doesn't happen that easy. I mean, I get this part, you know, whatever. But in the real, so then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do everything I can, you know. So I start reading up, and just like when I wanted to be a coach, you know what I mean? I was eager. I was hungry to hear, learn, be a sponge. And I started watching YouTube videos of actors that I looked up to, you know, actors that I thought were really great actors. And I would look up interviews of them talking about their acting, like the Actors Studio, things like this, you know what I mean? And the common denominator was, you need to do theater. That's where you learn, you know? So I just made the decision that I'm going to live out of my car, because I read all these stories, actors that had done it, you know, and I'm going to put everything into it, and I'm going to take classes, and I'm going to audition for everything that they asked me to, and went and got my headshots done. And I mean, I didn't have any resume. I didn't have anything, you know what I mean? And just started auditioning where I could. And, you know, it wasn't as easy as I thought it was. I mean, I didn't think it was going to be easy, you know what I mean? But, you know, I'm 18 months and I could have cashed it in, man. I told myself going into it, I'm going to give myself 3 years. And I don't need to be an A-list or a B-list actor at the end of 3 years, but at the end of 3 years, I need to know that this was a good decision. You know, I need to see that this is progressing the right way. So the real kicker was about 18 months in, you know, I was in my second winter of, you know, living in my car in New York City. And I did an audition, and it was terrible, and I was pissed at myself. And I go outside, I got no money, and I had to walk 80 blocks to my car, only to sleep in it at 10 below zero, you know what I mean? And that night I was thinking, man, you know, the average person would quit. You know, I could see that line in front of me, you know. The next morning I wake up and I had a phone call, and it was to be in a TV commercial. And it was what led to my getting my SAG eligibility.
Oh, do you have to earn that?
What's that?
You have to earn that? I was going to ask
you. Oh yeah, you got to earn that.
Okay.
Dude, can I take 60 seconds to go to the bathroom?
Yeah, absolutely. Go.
All right, hold on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll fill the air. I'm good at that.
Hang on.
Yeah, I was going to ask him about the SAG card. It's funny, if you know me, or maybe you're like me, you're a big fan of the show The Office. I get this very Andy Bernard feeling from Kevin here, you know, never acted, but Andy knew how to sing and play the guitar, and maybe dressed a little nicer than Kevin. Although if you remember Kevin, when he coached, he liked to have his leather jacket and what have you. But I get the feel, I wanted to say to Kevin, like, Kevin, like, this is a bad idea. You're not memorable. You're not big enough to be a character actor. You're not funny enough to be a lead. So I was going to ask him about that SAG card. He'll have to tell us what it stands for, but I knew it's a card like you have to have if you're an actor or actress. And I thought it was more of like a membership, like you had to buy your SAG card. I didn't know that you necessarily had to earn it. So it'll be interesting to hear what he had to do to earn his SAG card.
All right. Sorry about that,
That's
man. I
okay.
was.
I
Um,
you'll
so,
have to listen to the podcast on your own to find out everything I just said there if you didn't hear me.
oh, okay.
You'll enjoy it. But what I was asking, and as you were bringing that up, I was gonna ask this. You talked because I knew there's something called a SAG card, but
Right.
I thought it was more of a membership. You have to actually earn it.
Yeah.
What do
Yeah.
you have to do to earn it?
So it's tough. It's actually probably one of, if not the most difficult union to become a member of.
Hmm.
So, in order to get your SAG eligibility, so Screen Actors Guild is the um, Screen Actors Guild is the union for actors,
Mm-hmm.
okay, TV and commercial actors, not stage. Stage has their Broadway has their own union, okay, which is called Actors Equity, and so which is equally as hard to get into. But in order to earn your Screen Actors Guild card, you have to either easiest way is that you have to land a speaking role in a union project. So if you have a speaking role in a union project, which would be a regular television show or a TV commercial, okay, a national TV commercial. Well, it doesn't have to be national, but a TV commercial, you know. But you basically what happens is you're a non-union worker, and the process to even get a role is difficult.
Hmm.
So you have to submit or be asked to submit your headshot, your resume, and your acting reel for a gig. Okay. So if your agent or if you personally submit yourself for something, then they'll look at your stuff and they'll ask you to audition. Okay. So you can't just willy-nilly audition for anything.
Hmm.
Okay. You have to essentially earn an audition. So
Yeah.
you have to
Okay.
be asked to audition or whatever. So then you're auditioning, but if you're a non-union person, you're auditioning against union people. All people have already earned their SAG card.
Hmm.
Okay. So obviously people who are more experienced as actors, you know, and so you've got to land the role over all those union people that have applied for it. Okay. Or that have auditioned for it, you know. And so there's that way. And, you know, and listen, you're in New York City where there's tens of thousands of actors.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm a I'm a middle-aged guy, middle-aged Caucasian male, you know, and I'm going up against every other middle-aged Caucasian male, which there's tens of thousands of for every role, you know. And and so you can earn your so if you get the role, then you earn your eligibility into the
Okay.
SAG. The other way that you can do it is the hardest way, in a way that I said that I would never do, was you can become an extra. And if you are an extra, a non-speaking role extra in a TV show that's a union show, and you grabbed a union background spot three separate times, three separate shows,
Hmm.
then you can get three waivers, and then you can join it that way.
Hmm.
Now, I made the decision early on. I refuse to do background work.
Hmm.
Okay, if I'm either going to be a good enough actor to act, or I'm not going to act. I'm not going to be a background person because it's the worst job ever. You just it's not even acting. You're just walking. You're the guy. There was a documentary. Oh, you're the guy that was in that thing. You know, it's
I
these
saw
people that are
that.
just there.
Yeah.
So you can earn it, but that's the absolute worst way to earn it. And really, you're earning it to do what? Just end up with union background work as
Mhm.
opposed to speaking work. You know what I mean? So so I earned it by doing it the hardest way, which is to land a role over union people, and
Mhm.
so that's how I ended up earning it. But
What's the different? So you talked about Broadway,
yeah, Broadway musicals. Yeah,
yeah, not musicals, stage. So there's stage,
yeah, the
there's
stage.
TV show, there's movies. I
Mm,
think you've been on some print stuff as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
print
the
stuff.
press.
There's no union for.
Okay.
So you know, I've done a lot of magazine ads, and I've done a lot of,
Do you have a preference? Like, do you prefer movie, TV show, stage, print?
well, I actually, I mean, I prefer doing film. I mean, I've done 6 independent films, but those are a crapshoot because even if it was a big blockbuster type movie, it may never even be seen. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I mean, a lot of movies, you know, you spend months and months making them, and then it literally never gets seen outside of festivals. You know, um, I do like that. I mean, I've mostly made a name for myself being a commercial actor. So I've actually starred in about 100 different commercials,
Hmm.
and many of them national TV commercials. You know, and but the easiest job is the print work.
Is
You
that
know,
right?
I mean, I seriously is that you know, I'm a middle-aged guy who's in better shape than most, you know, 30-year-old guys, you know, and and you know, so I do that. I've worked with stylists. I mean, it's just part of the whole job, you know what I mean? So like I I learned by working with different stylists and whatnot, what is the best way for me to look? You know, what's the best look for me? And the best look for me is the look you see now. So the goatee, you know,
Mm.
the professional hair, and even to the point where I learned how to shape my goatee in a particular way, to, you know, because I kind of have a, you know, square jaw and, you
Mm.
know, that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. So, I mean, there's a big process goes into it, you know what I mean? But really all you're doing is trying to be the best version of yourself all the time.
What do you have to do to, when we think actors, we think of the Tom Cruises, Tom
Yes.
Hanks. Maybe Tom's the only actor I can think of, but what do you have to do to make I don't want to call it the big break, because what is the difference? I don't know.
So really, you know, I mean, I make a great living doing this, and I'm fine being a commercial actor mostly, and just popping up in movies or popping up on TV shows. You know, I've done different crime shows on national TV, you know, shows,
Mhm.
but the really the big break comes when you either land a reoccurring role in a TV show,
Mhm.
or you land a decent sized role in a movie that does really well in the box office. I mean,
Mhm.
that's really what it comes down to. I mean,
That seems
you know,
harder,
oh yeah, I mean,
right? Because
it's a crapshoot,
you're up
you know,
against all
because
the A-listers for the actual
for
leads.
the that's right, yeah,
You still got to
because when
get
it
a
comes down
middle
to it,
slot. Yeah.
it's just like getting the Screen Actors Guild. So like, you know, you're a non-union person and you've got to beat out all these union people. Well, same thing to move to the next level is that you've got to be this unknown or
Mhm.
this commercial actor that beats out these guys for like, you know, but you know, I feel like there's still time. You know, I work at it really hard. I, you know, I do have a unique look, you know, that I continue to work on. You know what I mean? And I continue to hone the craft because I had no acting experience, you
Mhm.
know. And so luckily I understood somehow that acting is about not acting. It's about being yourself and seeing
Mhm.
yourself in these different scenarios and how you would act in real life. Well, you know, what would you say and how would you say it? It's just that you already know what you're going to say. It's
Mhm.
just how would you say it naturally, you know? And but for me, I mean, I have a big print shoot that's coming up in 2 months. So it's actually I'm I'm uh, I'm 10 weeks out from it right now, and I can't say what it's for because it's non-disclosed, but for a clothing line. But and it's out in LA. And while I'm out there, you know, I've lined up some potential meetings with some agencies that I feel as though uh, can take me and put me in the room with casting directors that
Mhm.
are looking for, because you know the thing about Hollywood right now, I mean, being in your 50s, I'm 50, and but being fit, you know, being, you know, I fit a particular role in, you know, you have to know who you are, you know what I mean? So like
Mhm.
for me, I'm considered to be an attractive guy, but I'm not model hot,
Mhm.
and they're not looking for model hot, they're looking for guys like me that could be your next door neighbor, but is, appealing, you know what I mean? And so really I've been on this huge training system that, because I want to be incredibly fit, obviously for this clothing shoot, but at the same time, when I'm out there, because my dream goal would be to be in an action movie,
Mm.
and I'm the same height as Tom Cruise and Bruce Willis and all these other guys. We're the same height. I'm in better shape than those guys, but those guys have the look, you know what I mean, and all those years built up. But I feel as though, if I get an opportunity to be in front of a casting director, then I'll have a good shot. I have agencies on the East Coast. When you're an actor, in order to even get auditions, you have to be with an agency. And my agency on the East Coast is great, but really I want to be in an LA agency, because that's where you really make the bigger jump.
And what's this other that you've got a production live events business? Tell
Yeah,
me
so
more
I
about that.
started, my big thing when I was building my life back up from ground level was that I didn't want to have a regular job. I'm just not that guy. I can't answer to somebody and I can't push a clock. It's the way it is. So I ended up starting my own live event production company that's grown like crazy. And now we do full scale, large concert production where we'll rent the theater, or we'll rent the land, and we'll go on the nut for $100,000 and sell the tickets and hope to make a profit, And so that really has taken off, and it's branched into two separate branches. So one branch handles live event production, and the other branch handles event promotion and venue management. So we run some venues, and we also are partnering like with American Track League to handle promotions and marketing for them. So I got the concert production company, I got that company, which fall under one umbrella, and then I'm actually partners with my buddy in a flooring company, which is like my retirement, because I wanted to find something that there will always be a need for.
Right.
And in order to be really successful in life now, you've got to have different things going on. You have to diversify. So even though my production company and event management company are on pause, and I lost, a lot of money over the last 4 months, I have my acting career, which it's slowed down. It didn't completely stop, it slowed down.
Right.
But I have my construction company, which never slowed down.
Right.
And so that's covering all those bases until all three companies are working at the same level and the acting career is working, full on again, So, and then, on top of that, I had started a nonprofit animal rescue called Rocky's Rescue. And
Really?
yeah, it's mostly it's a cat rescue program. So it's what's called a TNR. So TNR is trap, neuter, release. And what it is we go into the local community, and we identify areas where there are large populations of stray cats, where people dump cats, and go in, find the cats, assess them as to whether or not that they are adoptable or not. So either adoptable or feral. You can tell in 10 seconds if a cat's going to be friendly or not. And so if they're friendly, we partnered with a local veterinary place, and we take them in, get them tested for FIV, which is feline HIV, so FIV and leukemia. And if they're adoptable and they're disease-free, we get them spayed or neutered, and we adopt them out. If they are adoptable but they have FIV, they can still be spayed and neutered and adopted out, but they have to go to a single cat home. So it can be the only cat, or else it will spread this to the other cats. And if they are feral, so a feral cat is one that doesn't like humans. So so people use feral cats as interchangeably with other things, but really all it means is it's not friendly. So if you have a feral cat that will trap it like you would trap a raccoon, so got a trap or a regular trap. So when you trap it, you take it to the vet, and the vet will assess, test it for FIV and leukemia. If it has FIV and leukemia, unfortunately, we have to humanely euthanize it because it's going to spread the disease to other cats, and we have to curb that. But if it is feral, doesn't like humans, and it is disease-free, it's spayed or neutered, and then is placed back where we found it. Because it's just part of the environment. It's not its fault that it doesn't like humans. There's some humans I don't like, right? So, you put it back, and it serves a purpose. It's not going to propagate. It's not going to spread disease, and it's going to help curb the mice population or whatever, And then the other aspect of that program is that during times of disaster, particularly in underdeveloped communities or impoverished communities, during hurricanes or natural disasters, a lot of time domestic pets are left behind, just because the people can't care for them, or they just have to leave in a hurry. So we go in, and we're working right now in Myrtle Beach with Myrtle Beach Fire and Rescue, so that we can be certified, so that we can go in after a big hurricane and we can rescue these domestic animals. And then we can either rehome them with new homes or hang on to them until the families get their life back together and then get their pets back to them, because pets are such a big part of it. And it's a nonprofit, and we, it's named after my very first cat, which was a rescue cat, Rocky, who's here with me now. So
if someone's interested in helping out in this type of nonprofit, is there a website or something to direct people to?
Right now they can just hit me up at my own website, which is kevinbarbaro.com. And so we actually formally launch on January 1 of 2021 for the new tax year. You know what I mean? So right now we're operating like normal, but then the nonprofit will start on the 1st and it will move its way through. So.
Dude, when you were a coach, you traveled for recruiting, you had your team to coach, budget meetings that you'd have for school, track meets, what have you. Are you busier now than you were as a track coach?
It's interesting. People ask me all this because I have so many things going on, The reality is, one big change in my life is that I have balance in my life. I like I said, I am a better Kevin Hadsell than I ever was. And a big part of that is because I understand how to balance my life out. And there's a lot of hours in the day. There's a lot more hours than people think. So I'm an actor, but I don't really watch TV. I don't cruise the internet for, or social media. I don't play video games. I just don't waste time. And I even more now than ever before, I use my time wisely. So I'm on task, and I give everything as much attention as it needs and no more. And then I move on to the next thing. And so I can balance several things at a time, because everything only deserves a certain amount of attention. Problem is that a lot of times it gets out of whack, and you're giving things too much attention or not enough, So really, it sounds like a lot, but I easily juggle all of this and still have a regular life. I still enjoy playing golf and traveling, and it's just everything is done within the context of just a larger umbrella of life, But being a track coach, it helped in my current life because you have to balance multiple things, and you have to become suddenly an expert on financial aid, suddenly an expert on admissions, on injuries, on everything, how to drive a bus, it's so and really it's about also being able to deal with failure, and like I said, not being afraid of failure. I started all of these things simply because I wanted to, and I wasn't afraid if it didn't work out.
Well,
and thankfully it's worked out.
We just did 3 hours. That was quick, by the way.
Oh
quick
yeah.
3 hours. But I do want to, as we wrap up, I do want to make sure, let's give people maybe a question that they have on their mind for you or for someone, when I left coaching, I coached for 10 years
Mhm.
and did my Vegas thing and then came to Gill, but I routinely and still do, always get asked, would you ever go back? What do you miss? Do you miss it? Things like that. So I wanted to give you an opportunity. Would you ever go back? Do you want to go back? What do you miss? And is there, start there because I have a follow-up question depending on
Yeah.
what you think.
So, there are aspects of coaching that I miss. Yeah, I miss the athletes. I miss that making people better and convincing people that they are capable of something that they don't feel as though they're capable of doing, and I miss watching the growth in people and the competition with other coaches and all of that stuff. I do miss all of that. I don't miss um, the other things of coaching, the administration stuff, and I don't miss any of that because I have enough of that in my own life right now. So it's, and I don't like doing it in my own life, But when you have this many companies, there's always something to do.
Sure, yeah.
But I've been, I've had opportunities to go back to coaching. I mean, obviously, what happened should never have happened, but I know there's a lot of coaches out there and a lot of respected coaches that know who I am as a person, and they know that the last thing in the world I would do would be to put myself or them in that position. I mean, obviously, but the thing is, the lifestyle that I live is not conducive to coaching. I mean, I can't, as an actor, I just did 2 auditions earlier today, and then I did one yesterday. All of these things are going to film in the next 2 weeks. So it's one of these things where it's just this constant role where, like, even this week, I got to go down to Ocala, Florida on Thursday or Friday to film a TV commercial that I was booked to do. And in my world, they put you on hold for both days, even though it's only going to be one of them, and you don't know which day it's going to be. Even right now, I don't know which day it's going to be. So kind of hard to coach when you have that going on. And obviously, I have these companies that bring in way more money than I'm ever going to make coaching ever. I said to somebody else, I think it was John Wise, I was on his podcast. I said, in order for me to go back to coaching and to put all these other things on hold, I would have to get Pat Henry money, but nobody's given me Pat Henry money, and because, that's the lifestyle I live now. Why would I give all that up,
So it's just it's a no.
It's a hard no on, but you know what the thing is, I have said this, and and I mean it. I would actually enjoy being a volunteer.
I wonder if you were going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you have the
I would enjoy that.
flexibility.
Let someone else deal with all the things that are going on, and the coronavirus and social media kids and all this kind. Let someone else. If somebody wanted me, and I've had this discussion even recently about just coming in and actually just being a mentor. There's a lot to learn from somebody like me, somebody who's been at the higher level of the sport, and somebody who's been knocked down to ground zero. And so I would enjoy that, because then I can just come and go, and
you get that flexibility then.
And just and enjoy helping somebody to help their program and help the kids. I would be a volunteer easily. Yeah.
Well, there's certainly value for you to give to this great sport. You've done a lot in the sport in a short amount of time, to be real frank.
Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah, and I think people are better as they learn from experiences, and through life we're going to have good and bad experiences, and it does it is good to see growth. That's you have a growth mindset, not a scarcity mindset. So growth comes in a lot of different avenues, and you've certainly had a lot of different avenues to do those, to have those growths. And I just appreciate you being here on the show today, man, just being open and honest, and just giving us your story. I think there's a lot of value for people, young coaches, old coaches as well. I think there's a lot of value to learn from other people. And I think there's a lot of value in today's conversation.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, don't screw it up. That's best advice. Yeah.
There
Just
it
don't
is.
screw it up, man.
There's the headline. We buried the lead into the very last minute. Don't
Don't
screw up.
screw it up, bro.
That's a good lesson.
You don't want to be homeless like I was, man.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine that. Kevin, thank you so much, man, for being on the show. I love you to death, brother. Do appreciate you. Like I said, humbling yourself and being and talking about some difficult times in your life, man. I really do appreciate you giving that value to others that will listen to this episode.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Kevin.